I don't know. I always see it as like recharging a battery. I always feel like I come back a little bit more recharged, just like being away from people because
Right.
I'm a bit of an introvert and I'm fine being by myself. So I'll go
Right.
up and pop a tent and hang out for a weekend.
Go pinch a tent under your sleeping
Yeah,
bag and
yeah, yeah.
everyone. We are live. Welcome, welcome, everyone. By the way, we are live. This is the Pangburn Hangout. Today, we are dealing with my hypothetical. It's Hypothetical Tuesday. Is it hypothetically Tuesday? I guess that's what I'm saying. Uh, I'm calling this the Derek Chauvin hypothetical. But in order to attract more viewers, I've called it "Is Derek Chauvin?" Or no, I think what did I call it? Derek Chauvin not guilty? Question mark.
Yeah.
As though someone has already claimed this. But yeah, we'll get a few more in the room. I'm gonna invite the Discord. Real life, the Derek Chauvin hypothetical, and Scott's already with us.
Yo, yo, yo.
Yo, yo, yo. Have you been watching this? I mean, from a legal perspective, this has been fascinating to watch the trial.
I've only seen like news articles pop up. I haven't really paid attention to it though.
Right,
I'm sort of following what's going on with like North Korea and like Afghanistan right now.
right.
North Korea is like I don't know if you saw that. Kim finally said like, "Hey, we're in a bad situation." He finally just admitted it. And how bad do things have to be for him to admit that?
Like to ask for help.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, dude. It,
Yes, it's a no bueno.
yeah, yeah. You gotta be able to ask for help. That's an important thing when a leader can get there, but you want them to fucking get there quicker, sooner than
Yeah,
later. If your people are
yeah,
suffering.
yep. It really reminds me of I don't know if you ever saw that Seth Rogen movie where they went to North Korea.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah,
They had all that controversy around it, and I watched him. He's like, "What's the big deal?" Like, everybody was freaking out about it. It's just a Seth Rogen comedy.
right. Okay, cool. I just dropped that for everyone.
Yeah, so what is your position on that hypothetical? Where would you
Yeah, so I'll
go with
state
that?
it just to start off. I'll probably state it a couple times here, and just so we get it clear. So the hypothetical for today is if imagine Derek Chauvin is found not guilty of any crime, and they tell him he is free to go. So this happens, and then he gets kidnapped by people claiming to be Black Lives Matter. And then a video shows up a couple days later of the private, crowded hanging of Derek Chauvin. So they hang him to death. And then this video is leaked online. So my question is, if this hypothetical universe is to come true, if this actually does happen, what do you think the social attitudes will be towards what happened? Will people be of the one side saying, "Oh, it looks like justice was finally served," or would there be people, or do you think there would be more people on the side of, you know what, this is disgusting. We are above this. We need to find the people who carried this out, and what would people's reaction be? Would some Black Lives Matter affiliates be supportive of this, or would they want to come out and condemn it? Like, who would come out and condemn it? So that's the question. What I
Yep.
anticipate is if something like this happened, if this actually did happen, the social attitudes, what we would see is a lot of the people who tend to stay quiet step up and say, this is enough. This has, a lot of these people that are like, I never comment on social media. I have to comment now. Things have gotten too out of hand, taking justice into our own hands and killing people in America. This has to stop. I think that is really the attitude, and people would want people to be held accountable. So I guess the question is, if anyone thinks, and I do think that there would be a small group of people who would think that this was justified, which those people, if you think about it, that's quite terrifying to think that there could be a justified lynching. And so and so far from my polling so far, it seems like the people who are quickest to answer this hypothetical are the ones who are on either side of this extreme, right? But I've seen some pretty haunting messages about like, the fucker deserved it, and it's like after they're done hanging him, rape his body, and things like that. So. But yeah, what's your guys' take? If you need me to restate some of the hypothetical, I can. Welcome, Claire and Rogue.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Welcome, guys.
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah,
Scott?
what are you guys' opinions?
Oh yeah,
Let's go to Claire. Let's go to Claire and Rogue first.
Yeah, good idea.
I can go ahead if you don't mind, Claire.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So, what I think about this is it's not a far cry away from what we've been seeing done incrementally over the past few years. And as much as I might want to agree with you, Travis, that it's a very small proportion of people that think it's justified, there's also quite a large portion of the population that think if the decision is in any way beneficial to Chauvin, then they will believe that the justice system will have failed. So it's not a far step to go from failed justice system to we must take justice in our own hands.
Interesting.
Fair enough.
How do you,
Claire?
What do you think, Claire?
Specifically to Chauvin, I don't think, with everything that we see to the case, just talking about whether or not he's guilty, looking at like the body cam, looking at the autopsy, looking at, the report of Floyd's past, I don't think he is guilty. Looking at the body cam, you can see that George Floyd was very high. As soon as they had contact with the police, he was having issues breathing prior to being on the ground. They even offered him an ambulance, and he resisted, and he started to resist cops, which put him on the ground. And many people have reviewed the footage and have even put their person's knee on the same spot on the back as well. The autopsy showed that the amount of fentanyl in his system was very high and probably was overdosing him, and that there was really no neck injuries. So it's just very hard for me to understand, that he, when you see it, the first footage that we saw is with the looking at it, it does look like he's killing. But when you look at the body cam footage and you look at the autopsy report, that's not what it seems that David Chauvin killed George Floyd.
So I'll ask you the second part of this,
Interesting.
Claire.
Interesting.
And so the hypothetical goes like this. So say Derek Chauvin gets off 100%, no crime has been committed. And then when he gets out, he actually gets kidnapped by people who claim to be from Black Lives Matter. And then after he gets kidnapped, a couple days later, a video surfaces on the internet of them doing a private hanging with a bunch of people standing around, just kind of like the Saddam Hussein hanging video. So they do that, and that video surfaces online. Now, my question, Claire, is what kind of responses do you think we would see in general and from, let's say, extreme sides? Just give me an idea of what you think you would see on social media when people were talking about this.
Definitely an outcry. A lot of people will probably, continue. There will see riots. You probably will see protests. You will see people outcry against, police forces. As far as the safety of David Chauvin, I mean, the only thing I can compare the amount of hate, and it's totally different context, but Casey Anthony, when she went through her trial, it was very widely publicized, and the whole country that followed up with this case knew she was guilty, and a lot of people wanted to kill her. A lot of people didn't like her. Nothing happened to her. She was put under. So David Joe would probably have to be put under some sort of protection. But I think that we will see an outcry. We will see protests. We will see just as much as we saw when George Floyd was killed initially.
So, Claire, but the specific part of the hypothetical is, let's assume that this does happen, that they do a private hanging of Derek Chauvin. So now we're in that reality, and the video has circulated around the internet. How do you think people would react to that video of him being hung by other citizens?
I think it'd be a mixed reaction. I think some people would say it was just, and some people would say that it's not. And
so,
I don't know.
But does that is that frighten you to think that some people would think it's just that someone went through the court system and they were found by a jury and let's say a judge not guilty of the crime, and then they took it into their own hands and went and did a hanging to take and to execute it, even though execution wasn't even on the table, but they execute him. And you think people would actually have the gall to come out and say, you know what, you get what you deserve?
Yeah.
Yikes.
I mean,
that's scary.
I think people do. I mean, I'm sure there's cases out there where somebody was found not guilty of something and they were jumped or, whatever. I mean, not just, with the whole not guilty thing. There are people who are convicted for their crimes, and then when they go into jail, they're killed for those crimes. I mean, child molesters are very much targeted in prisons. And so I think that there are people that take justice into their own hands already. And so I think it'd be a mix. And I think people will come out and boldly say they get what they deserve. And that is scary. That is scary that we've reached that kind of
and if you heard someone, Claire, if you heard someone say, well, he gets what he deserves, he killed a man, what is your reaction to them if you felt like you wanted to make an argument as to why that was immoral for them to think or say that?
Man, I don't know.
It'd be like, well,
like what would be if you saw someone like someone you kind of knew say like, I'm glad they hung him. Honestly, the guy deserves it.
Oh, yeah, can I chime in kind of on that?
Yeah, I'll get to our couture.
Okay.
We'll let Claire sit with it for a bit. I want to go to the Art of Grim and Rogue. Did you deal with the whole hypothetical?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, only one-sided, but yeah.
Yeah. Let's go to Grim. Yeah, Scott, you got something?
No, I was just saying, yeah, it's like a hypothetical is typically one-sided. That's the point of the thought experiment.
Yeah, I don't really know what people mean by sided. It's a hypothetical, right? You could imagine that's whatever outcomes you could imagine for this, what you would see on social media. But the fundamental question, our couture, is if this video surfaced of people doing a public public but private hanging of Derek Chauvin, taking things into their own hands, what do you think the reactions would be like on social media when that video surfaced, and what would your reaction be?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like
is that a question
to
of me?
reiterate too, it's not, it's like that's not making any sort of moral argument. It's a question, so when you come into this, like think about it as being a question as opposed to being like a moral argument being made. Because a lot of times people, like when somebody asks a question, people try to read moral arguments being made into that question. That's not what's happening here.
No. Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead, Arcatur.
Okay. So I mean, so to that question, I mean, so you're saying like a public hanging of the officer that basically kind of did what he did to George Floyd, right?
So
okay.
Quickly, the judge and jury find him not guilty. He gets released. People who call themselves or who identify themselves as Black Lives Matter people during this hanging video, and they chanting "Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter" as they hang him. And like in Saddam Hussein style hanging video, and that gets released on social media. What kind of reactions would you see, do you think, and how would you react?
Okay, so the whole thing. Okay, the whole scoop. All right. So basically, it would kind of start and end with I'm against the death penalty. And pretty much I'm against the death penalty because of the uncertainty of it, because basically it's like you're going to have like kind of a 4% margin, and that's within the government. So if it's kind of vigilantism, it's probably way higher. Whereas kind of like the cost of getting to kill the person that did a horrible thing or deserved to die or whatever is actually killing and harming more innocent people at the cost of killing the guilty people. So that's always what I think about with death penalty. So I don't in any way support that. And pretty much, yeah, I mean, I don't know, Dilly, like, it's kind of like if there was like a death penalty thing, I would basically be outraged. I would hope other people would be outraged. I can't really see how other people would react. What I would say is if someone's going to react in a kind of violent way and be violent, that violence is always indicative of personality traits and who they are rather than political positions. And you can see it's like they could have the opposite political position and be just as violent, and something would lead to other violence. It's like I never would say like, oh, the right's more violent than the left or the left's more violent than the right. It's like people are going to be engaged in political violence because of personality traits, not the position themselves. It's just like that's always like said. It's just like so basically, I don't know. I would be outraged of it. I would hope other would be. I can't really like. There could be a handful of bad actors. Like this happened. Whoa, we got
Sean, can you mute, brother? Things are really loud on your end. Thanks.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, yeah. So basically, I mean, I would be outraged. I would hope other people would be outraged. I can't speak to other people that would have very bad personality traits that would maybe endorse or even do violence themselves, but that would just have to do with, I would just make the point of, even if that did happen, that would just have to do with their personality traits and their psychology rather than any political position that they had, and that I would just disavow.
Right. So one thing for the room, guys, please, I encourage you, I'm going to post this on the Pangburn tab. Please engage. If you want to engage in text chat while we're chatting here today, please engage on YouTube. I just posted the link to the new channel, the Pangburn Offensive. We are live there. Arcatur, I want to push a little bit on something. So say someone you kind of know, this post comes up in your Facebook feed, and they say, and they post a link, let's say a dark web link to the actual hanging video, and they say, serves him right, fucker deserved it, and you had an urge and you felt compelled to comment, what would you say to that specific comment?
I just want to make sure I understand. Like, so it's like so basically, like a friend of mine, let's say they endorse the violence that would hypothetically happen against the cop.
Yeah, they say, here's the video of the hanging, right on, the fucker deserved it. What?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, like I would just be against it. I mean, I would be against it. I would hope other people would. Apparently, he wouldn't. I would be against. I would say, hey, you can't really. Violence doesn't solve more violence, So I mean, I would just basically be against it as if anyone else would have.
Right.
I posted it.
Okay. So you would just state the kind of the same arguments you laid out. There wouldn't be anything specific for that comment. Okay. Let's go to Bruno. Bruno, same hypothetical your way.
What would I do? What do I think would happen, or what would I do?
No. So I think you read the hypothetical, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the video surfaces of the public but private hanging of Derek Chauvin, and what do you think the reactions would be on social media, and how would you react?
All right. I think majority of the reactions would be for the hanging. Given that most people would most people would believe an eye for an eye philosophy. So that's what I think. How would I react? I won't be surprised because the supporters of the murder of the possible, if this happens, hypothetically speaking, the supporters of the murder would be also the supporters of the ideology, at least the majority. So I won't really be surprised.
And what is it? What do you think of someone who's willing to see justice or joy in a public hanging?
What do I think of them? I mean, I would. So the video surfaces of the public.
Nivik, please mute. Thanks.
Oh, yep. I would say that perhaps it's their version of justice, because justice really in itself is some form of revenge. So what would I think?
Yeah.
I would say it's not right. It's not the right way to go about it, but I would, I'd condemn it, obviously.
All right, and let's role play this a bit. You comment that, and then I say, "Fuck you! You just like that he's got away with killing a black man. Now he can't get away with anything now."
I would just say, you're ignorant, sir, and it's not the right way to go about things. An eye for an eye. Perhaps it's not the best way, because you would just, because it's the. I don't want to bring in another hypothetical, but it's sort of similar to one of the philosophical questions where a man kills another man, right? And the man who was dead, his son witnessed his murder and decides to avenge his father's murder. And when he got order and he decided to kill the man who killed his father, he realized that man's dead, but that man has a child now. And so does he kill the child or does he not? So the point of this is, the reason if this ever happens, the reason I would be against it is it just sort of transfers the burden of hate, if you may.
Right. And as it stands right now, I don't know how much you've been watching about the trial, but wow, are we getting into a lot of detail in this trial? But what do you think the jury is going to swing not guilty? Do you think there's reasonable doubt?
I really can't tell. There's a lot of pressure on it as well. I would say they'd swing towards. I think he's dead either way. Because he's a police officer and he goes to jail. If you go to jail as a police officer, you're dead. So perhaps
there will be reasonable justification to give him special protection in jail. So I
could be. I suppose.
Yeah, I really don't think. That would just be such a failure of the justice system, right? It always is whenever they allow.
I hope it doesn't happen, but I mean, he's a cop and he killed. It's like the typical. But regardless of that,
when are cultures going to get over that, Bruno? When are they going to fucking get over this guy's a cop? Kill him if he's in jail. That's retarded.
It's retarded. I know. It's that thing, right? It all goes back to the identity problem where we are the defaulters, and so we identify as the defaulters, and these are the people that put us in here. so it's us against them sort of idea. And they can't seem to self-abstract and think, well, let's get rid of the sentiment and look at this objectively and see, oh, all right, I did default, he's supposed to do this and whatnot. So it's all predicated on the identity thing also with the, but just to your other question, the jury thing, I don't know really. I would think they would incarcerate him perhaps, but I really can't tell.
Yeah. I hope, the justice system shouldn't take into consideration the outcry level. It really should be a judgment of the law. And if there is reasonable doubt in this case, and I hope that the public pressure doesn't play into it.
I really hope so as well, honestly.
I want to jump to Sean next. Sean Sullivan. So the video is leaked of the kidnappers of Derek Chauvin. They're chanting "Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter" as he drops noose around his neck. Derek Chauvin's, he's murdered on camera. And this video is released to the world and people see this. What do you think their reactions would be, some of the reactions, and what would your reaction be?
I would say that you're probably going to have people that are going to support it. You're going to have people that are going to be horrified, and rightly so. And I think horrified is inadequate in describing how I would react.
And as someone who is, your study is in psychology, when you look at the conditions necessary in which you would find some joy or support something like this, what do you think? Where does that take you when you're thinking about, the personality of someone that could allow for this?
It speaks really to a deep-rooted resentment. I would say at whatever terrible things happen in someone's life, that it's the best way of taking revenge. Because if I remember your hypothetical correctly, and correct me where I'm wrong, it's if Chauvin was to be found not guilty in the court of law. Is that correct?
So Derek Chauvin is found not guilty. He's released, but people get their hands on him and they kidnap him. And then a couple days later, a video of his private/public hanging with a group chanting "Black Lives Matter," him being hung. And that video was released. How people would react to that video?
I think that the people would be motivated by revenge, resentment, and maybe I want to just cause mayhem for the sake of causing mayhem. That I would say that would be something that we could point out to you.
Right. And Sean, where do you think the jury's going to go on this? And do you think the judge is going to uphold the jury's decision?
See, I think this is where they already kind of went the wrong way to begin with. It should have been a bench trial. It should not have been a jury trial. It should have been a bench trial, and that means that it should be the judge, the defense, and the prosecution. It shouldn't, because, Minnesota already gave George Floyd's family a historic settlement, so that already you can already conceive a bias that, okay, the city says they're guilty of something if they're willing to pay that much money, for one. Two, you've already seen online videos of people saying if they don't get the verdict they want, then the city will burn. So that's going to corrupt the jury.
Right.
You have what just recently happened with that young man that was accidentally shot by police. That's going to have an effect. And so I really think a jury trial was the wrong way to go from this. And this is speaking as a forensic psychologist. You have these events that are going to be in the person's minds, and it's going to be very hard to stay objective on this.
Right.
And so I think the trial's already become corrupt. It'll be a hung jury if we're lucky. But as far as it stands right now, all things considered, if you look strictly upon the evidence and the testimony that's been presented by the prosecution that's backfired on them, I could see Chauvin being acquitted. And then I don't think anything good is going to come from it. But as our society is predicated on the presumption of innocence because there's something valuable about each individual that the law and the state have to abide by,
Right.
really comes down to this moral conundrum of, do we sell our soul to the mob to prevent chaos and absolute mayhem as a result, or do we stand firm in our principles and hope to Christ that it doesn't go somewhere that it needs not to go, I guess, is the best way of trying to articulate that.
Right. Okay, cool, man. Thanks. Let's jump to Dao Tzu. Dao Tzu. What do you think? What's your answer to this moral conundrum?
Well, it's kind of hard to. What's exactly the question? Like, what would I do if a friend of mine?
No. What? So I think you got the first part of this in this hypothetical universe where Derek Chauvin gets he gets acquitted. He's free to go. He later gets kidnapped, and then 2 days later, a video shows up on social media and on the internet of him being hung by a group chanting Black Lives Matter while he gets hung, kind of like Saddam Hussein style hanging video. And then that video surfaces on the internet. And what do you think the general reactions would be? Do you see people being like rejoicing over this disgusting behavior, what I would call disgusting behavior, or do you think there's going to be a lot of people that really want to fight for law and order and the justice, the justice that should be served here, because Derek Chauvin's going through the justice system, the process is running itself. So what do you think the reactions would be, and how would you react?
Well, I guess Twitter would be split down the middle 50-50. I think the actual United States would be more would be a little closer, or farther away. Like, I feel like less average people would endorse just straight up murdering somebody for anything outside of a law, especially if he was acquitted or about to be or something. But I do think the loudest forms of social media would be either split down the middle with people on either side, or it would be mostly one side or the other.
Interesting. And how would you react? What would be your reaction?
I would be kind of surprised, but I wouldn't be. I would be mostly disappointed. Like,
yeah,
you hear about this stuff happening in history books, and like I could imagine it happening in Russia or something, but you wouldn't think it would happen on your home turf.
Right. Let's jump to Nivik. Nivik, you got the hypothetical, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, people would be split.
So you think,
like what most people said.
When you say split, do you think that there would be a large amount of people posting and saying, "I'm glad they hung him"?
Well, I think they wouldn't care if he gets hung or not. I'm probably not saying that they glad, but it's kind of like, well, oh well, just like it was oh well with that guy dying.
Yeah, but no one said
it's oh well with him.
No one said oh well about George Floyd, right?
Well, yeah, some people didn't, but some people...
Who said oh well about George Floyd dying?
Well, probably. Well, yeah, I've heard people will be like, well, you act away or resist away. Some people, I'm just saying that they'd have biases and they'll just lean towards it and say things like, well, he shouldn't have done this and shouldn't have done that. And he probably kind of had it coming. Oh, well.
And how would
I'm
you react Nivik, how would you feel morally about that?
Well, okay, I'll be honest. Like, I didn't see much consideration for in the arrest. So
In George Floyd?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's not like I would agree with somebody setting up Chauvin to do something to him.
Because it sounded like you
I
were
disagree
about to
with
go
that.
down the road to justify it by saying that, well, George Floyd was treated pretty poorly, so I don't know, man.
Well, that's the thing. That's the hypothetical gray line. It's not easy to come to a conclusion of
It's easy
saying
for
somebody's
me, dude.
innocent.
Like, I'm talking about your moral stance
I'm just saying
on
the trial's not
this
easy.
hanging, dude.
Well, it doesn't have to be a hanging. I mean, somebody can set up a hypothetical of just
No, but we're
resisting
dealing
with
with
him.
my hypothetical, Nivik.
I get your hypothetical, and I'm addressing.
So I'm asking
people.
Nivik that just.
No, I wouldn't agree with it. I told you I wouldn't agree with it.
Okay.
Because that's going against the law,
what-
and people will say that's going against the law.
Yeah,
And that's how people will feel. One person would be like, well, he kind of had it coming, and others would think, well, I mean, how could that's against the law? I mean, how could you have law and order if you're your own judge, jury, and executioner?
Right.
So you can't go against the law.
Scott, you had something there?
I was going to say that's frontier justice.
Right. Doolittle, what do you think of this hypothetical? And do you, and also maybe Doolittle, start off with whether you think this hypothetical, has any high level of probability of occurring.
Okay, so the acquittal or
what?
So I guess the first step in the
so he gets acquitted, and then he gets kidnapped and then hung, and that video is posted online. How do you think people would react to that, and how would you react to it?
Yeah, so you asked it if it's a high probability of happening. I'd put it in the lower end of probabilities, but it's definitely not out of the realm of feasibility. I think there's a good chance he's going to get acquitted based on what I've seen, but I have no idea how the jury's going to vote. So
yeah, the next question.
Maybe the prosecution comes out with something that's really damning.
Yeah.
So it's still very possible that he could get found guilty.
Yeah, the next question after Doolittle finishes with the next part is going, just so you guys can be ready, is going to be outside of this hypothetical, what do you think is going to be the likely response if he does get acquitted? But Doolittle, feel free to finish.
Yeah, I think we have historical examples of, for example, after the Rodney King guy got acquitted, there was some pretty serious riots. People in my town we're all getting their guns out and, hey, come down my street. they never did, but there were some pretty serious riots in a lot of cities, and I don't recall if the police officer ended up getting caught and chased down, but I certainly would fear for the life of the police officer in this case if he gets acquitted. And it's not, I don't think it's because people can't see the same way as the jury, but he's already Floyd is already a martyr, right? So I'm not sure you can go back the other way from the point that it's already gotten to. I mean,
right.
It's already gotten to the point where other, every subsequent accidental or on purpose killing of a Black American by a police officer is being met with more and more violence on a national scale. So, if the acquittal happens, not making a judgment of whether it's right or not, I think there's going to be some pretty serious rioting, and if that police officer doesn't do a good job of hiding, I don't think there's any hope for him.
Right. Guys, join Bruno and I on YouTube. We're hacking the planet there. Join the chat.
But that's all. This is all speculation because
on the chat.
we're talking about what other people might do in the future, and
right, yeah.
Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Who knows?
No, it's and
I can't read minds, but I'm just looking at patterns of what the behavior has been over the last year.
Yep, that's.
It doesn't have to be that. It could be any other scenario of somebody just wronging him because of who he is.
Oh, sure, yeah. No, he's gonna get wrong. That guy's gonna get wrong.
So I think you should ask, like, how much sympathy would you have for a guy that fell asleep on a guy's neck until he died? Would you think like, oh, you spat in his coffee? Like, would you cry over? Would you go to bed and cry at night over it, or would you think, oh well? Mm-hmm. I think, oh well.
Yeah, but Nivik,
Nivik.
So he's gone through the legal process. The jury has said in this hypothetical, not guilty. The judge has upheld the jury's decision, and he's now up in public and someone spits in his coffee and you say, oh, well.
Uh-huh. Because I get
why?
that. I get that he was legally in the right. Not necessarily. I mean, I don't mean like. I get that legally it's kind of like
the people have found him, Nivik, in this hypothetical, not guilty of the crime he's being charged for.
Yeah, that's what.
So why should it be okay to spit in his coffee?
Right. Let's just say enough evidence comes out showing that he did not commit murder. It was just a bad camera angle.
Well, even if even if the evidence, whatever you want to say about the jury or judge, but he's gone through the right process in this hypothetical to be released as a free man. Mm-hmm. He should not be subjected to violence, attacks.
I would agree with that.
Brutality. And Nivik, you're saying in your moral foundation, oh well.
Well, okay. When you look at a scenario and you see that a person can legally get off of shooting somebody, there's always a that you could always see where a million routes that could have been taken to not have escalated it up to that point.
That doesn't matter, Nivik. Well, that's why we have law.
I understand. It's kind of like I get that technicality part. But I mean, like, technicalities can go both ways. You know what I mean? Like, I can accidentally just do stuff too. It's kind of like there's an inconsideration there. If you see an inconsideration, I mean, okay. Can I ask you a question? How like if you see a scenario where you see that a person could have easily have not gone a route to kill a 14-year-old kid, and they got off. It's kind of like, okay, I get it. You shot the kid 15 times in the back because, technically you could have done that. But, you could have easily, the kid's half crippled. You didn't really have to, but I get it. You're a cop and you went through the procedures. But really, man, it's kind of like, how am I supposed to have sympathy for you?
Because
I saw a video where a cop shot a kid, a child, and technically that cop got off, and it's kind of like, come on, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but that's not. Nivik, if the law supports what that guy did, and if you don't like the law, Nivik, if you don't like the law, you need to lobby for different laws. You need to get petitions going. You need to work within the legal system, not go and bully people who had an outcome in court that you didn't like.
And by the way, that is of America's past. There were things where I hear people say something like, well, oh, that's mob rule. But in the past, a lot of times people uprose against things in changing things to make sure that policies or different rules or whatever would change in order to avoid what has happened that didn't necessarily needlessly had to have happened in the first place.
Like you're talking about the civil rights movement. Some of these rights
All
movements
types
are
of
justified, Nivik.
No, I think he's talking about the revolution against the monarchy.
Oh, the revolution. Oh. Anyways.
It's the same difference.
So,
same difference at that point.
Yeah. Let's go to Mace. Mace, do you know the hypothetical?
Is Derek Chauvin not guilty?
No, I'll give you the hypothetical quickly. So Derek Chauvin is found not guilty in this hypothetical. He's released freely. He gets kidnapped by people claiming to be Black Lives Matter. And then a video surfaces 2 days later of a private/public hanging of Derek Chauvin, and it starts getting circulated around the internet. What do you think the social attitudes would be towards that public hanging, and what would your attitude be?
Okay, brilliant. Well, I think the
Can you speak up, dude, and get a little closer to your mic? Thanks.
Is that better?
Yeah, way better.
I think the social media attitude we'll probably see from mostly the Black Lives Matter perspective. So they'll be in favor of it. And all of the celebrities and big corporations will also come out saying, yeah, he deserved it. We support BLM. But I personally wouldn't be in favor of that.
Right. And would you feel at this point, if people were supporting like a like this organized hanging of another citizen, would you feel a moral responsibility to speak out against it?
I mean, I would, but I don't think it's my responsibility because I'm not involved.
Because doesn't your morality come into interaction with the law of the land and how it's upheld?
I would speak out against it, as in if someone asked me my opinion, I'd say, no, I don't agree with that. And I'd probably leave a couple of dislikes on some YouTube videos that support it. But otherwise,
that'll cure it. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, can I make an extension of Nivik's point?
Yeah, go ahead, Arcoteur.
Yeah, so I think though there is an aspect of it I agree with, because I mean obviously, like kind of in a like society is not, doing what it's supposed to be doing if that's what's going on, like public hangings and all of that. But there is something to say about why you would have a government, why you would have a justice system in the first place, which is that you would have that in place so that, like, when people do horrible things, there's not just like kind of a mob chasing after them and killing them. And, so you can convict them, you can put them in prison, and you can you can keep them safe, but also punish them and have them do their time. So I think that what Nivik kind of is speaking to is kind of the byproduct of what happens when you just don't have a justice system. So it's kind of also a product of just when the system isn't working, or of a symptom of what happens when the system isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. But at the same time, you're not, being like, oh, this is great. But it is symptomatic of a broken system.
I don't agree with the mob. I like legally, yeah. But I mean, like, if something about that happened that you think that it could have been, there could have been, it didn't have to get to that point, then, naturally people feel a certain way. Like if you look at something and you think like, well, like Travis, you should ask people opinion wise, how you think things are handled, and how do you feel about how things are handled? You think they could have or should have been,
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're saying is like the system really should have done what it's supposed to do, so it didn't lead up to that.
Wait,
right?
Yeah, but so if you're gonna say you're claiming that the judge and jury didn't make the right decision, you disagree with the decision. That doesn't mean that they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
No, I agree with what they're
uphold
supposed
the law.
I would agree with I'd agree with the process of the law. And some
Well,
people
not necessarily.
they use it
Oh,
again. They some people they use it in a way kind of like they put themselves in a situation of wanting to shoot somebody.
well, I mean, I kind of want to push back against Pangburn because I mean, you wouldn't say that, oh, like I know that wouldn't mean that that the judge and jury necessarily didn't do what they're supposed to do, but I mean, you could probably weigh the scenario where many times the justice system doesn't work and they're not doing what to be doing.
I would
You
need
would
to
deny
see.
it,
I
right?
would need to see examples and reasons why you don't like the particular systems. Because yes, you're right that
Many
litigation,
people were legally
Nivik,
wrongly.
litigation is always upgraded architecture, and that's a good thing about the law. There's upgrades being made and new things being written, details being clarified, and I think that's a good process.
Well,
But
I mean, but, okay, sorry. Oh, I mean, do you think like okay, but do you think, for example, a lot of pedophiles and child molesters get a lot less lenient sentences than drug dealers? You agree with that?
they get a lot less what?
A lot less prison time in general. They'll send a drug dealer for like crazy amount of time, and they'll barely, almost effectively decriminalize pedophilia and child molestation. That's pretty much what happens. Like they don't get any sentences.
Yeah, they
Like
actually
do
do
you?
get sentences. What are you talking about? Like how? Like
I'm talking about every time.
what are the current sentences, and what do you think they should be? I'll come back to you, but I want to pass the mic around a bit. But Arquateur, that's a good.
Okay.
We'll bring that back up. So now I just want to open it up generally on the hypothetical. Maybe we'll start with Scott, and then we can just get a general conversation going. What do you think about some of these reactions, Scott?
I mean, it's a bit all over the place. You know, everybody's coming from a pretty different frame of reference on the question, which I find interesting. To me, the basic question of itself, like, of course, you know, you should reject people lynching somebody. I mean, that's the fundamental moral question, right? Do you support somebody? Do you support people lynching somebody, regardless of what they've done? Like, still, that's just not justice. You know, and then you get down to like different things according to whether certain laws are just is what we've sort of like got into that last little bit. But then there's also, you know, certain people are talking about differences between right and left, and it's just been sort of a grab bag of responses from what I've listened to.
And there should be changes in policing and what you call it, the justice system, because there are people that were innocent that were put in jail.
Yep, that's true. Dal, what you got anything to add after listening to everybody?
I might want to pose a similar hypothetical of like, say the exact same thing happens, except this time the judge and the jury all happen to be white and from the Deep South and wearing Make America Great Again caps. Would that change your position on the outcome of the court case?
That's
But
clever.
I don't think the question was the outcome of the court case. I thought the question was the reaction to that afterwards. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. So
in and of the court case itself, yeah, I mean that would.
okay, I guess I should clarify. Does that change your reaction to the murder of Derek Chauvin after he gets off from the court case?
Yeah, it would definitely affect it the same way like Emmett Till's like trial. You obviously knew it was, you know, if anybody's looked into that, you obviously knew it was fucked up.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good place to kind of take the hypothetical because I know Nivik and someone else was harboring for the other side, and I think if you tweak the hypothetical a little bit, it'll flip flop most people. So no. So if the public hanging occurred, but then you found out that the judge and the jury were all from the Deep South and white, and were all happened to be wearing "Make America Great Again" caps, like what would your view of
So you still you still have a problem there, because then we could have a court be like, okay, no, we could recognize this was a illegitimate verdict, and let's try it again. But so there's
No, he's talking about the outcome, the trial outcome of
no,
being
yeah,
innocent.
the hanging, because
yeah, if
I would just say hanging people like right off the bat. That's a no-go zone for me.
I mean, I'm pretty anti-killing in general. So
Yeah.
like, but it, I think that the more evidence you give to that, the more suspicious you make the trial, the more people are going to be on Nivik's side. Is pretty much what I'm trying to get at. You don't fuck with a man's coffee, goddammit.
You guys remember that
That's
story?
Wait,
Like
what? What did you
just
say?
It was
for
an accident. What are you talking
a really
about?
quick tangent, and it'll come right back. I don't know if you guys ever heard that story of the guy who got arrested for pissing in the fucking coffee pot at work. He would come in every day and piss in the coffee pot. They eventually got him on camera. And then back to the conversation. That's I'm not seriously.
What do you guys think about how he handled the thing, the Chauvin? He did an A+ job.
No, I mean, if you're getting into that kind of stuff, I mean, I don't know if you saw, like, I did watch the guy who's the MMA, the
If every
MMA
cop moved
guy.
like him, could you imagine?
Dude,
Like how many bodies would be out there?
the MMA guy came in and he's like, no, totally, 100%. He was doing a blood choke on that guy, and it was fucking, yeah, that will kill somebody. Period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Oh, but didn't the chief coroner, didn't they? I thought they just said on in court record the other day that he did die of asphyxiation. He died of lack of blood to the brain. Yeah. So former officer Derek Chauvin for pressing his knee on or close to Floyd's neck for what prosecutors said was as much as 9.5 minutes. Asked about the finding, subdural restraint and neck compression led to Floyd's death. Baker said that Floyd had severe underlying heart disease and a large heart that needed more oxygen than normal to function, as well as narrowing of two heart arteries. That being said, he still did say it was because of the neck compression. Yeah, I mean it's definitely an interesting case, man. I mean, it's there are a lot of like pre-existing like situations that led to it, but at the same time, isn't it the final action that somebody should be held accountable for?
That's how the law is, you know. It works out a certain way, and I get that.
Yeah,
But I mean,
so
like I ask people's opinion, when it comes to the guy, you mean the guy sounds pretty
well,
messed up. Like, how much of a threat could he have been? So it's kind of
well,
like,
well,
okay,
well,
you
well,
technically,
well, hold on, here's a thing that comes into uh, aspect when you're talking about a court case. And he says, in my opinion, the law enforcement subdual, restraint, and the neck compression was just more than Mr. Floyd could take by virtue of those heart conditions. So that's where it comes in. That's where there's things turn a bit gray.
Right. What do you guys think of those of you who have been watching the skill set of these litigators? I think they've been pretty outstanding.
well, you follow the whole trial.
Especially, yeah. Well, I've been almost.
I've only read everything that I've know about it. I've just read about it. I haven't watched any videos of it yet.
Right. So you guys should look at the conversations in detail in the trials and how they're analyzing each slide of the video. Like instances where it looks like Derek Chauvin is no longer putting pressure on the neck. So the detail in which these things we're talking very generally about right here are being discussed in incredible detail, slide by slide, magnification,
exactly.
Looking for obstructions where the knee adjusts down to the closer to the kind of the upper back as opposed to the neck. And, there's a lot for young litigators who are getting into criminal litigation. This is the stuff you want to be watching.
Did he lose his job as a cop?
Oh yeah.
I think he's on. His
wife divorced him.
Oh man, I feel so sorry for the guy. I'm crying right now.
I'm pretty sure he lost his job.
He had a pretty bad day. Lost his wife and his job in the same day.
Dude, he lost his truck too. I mean, that's a goddamn country song right there for you. The only thing you're missing.
All he did was accidentally kill the guy. He didn't do anything. Give the guy a break.
So yeah, the key is they're what they've been discussing is whether Derek Chauvin was the primary cause of death.
Exactly.
Or he contributed in his force to the death, and whether there's reasonable doubt in any of those propositions. And I would agree with those who are saying that there seems to be reasonable doubt at this point but that doesn't mean that jury is going to feel that way who has been in there experiencing this in a different way than we are as viewers on our, the comfort of our beds or laptops, wherever.
Here's the one thing too. How many of his fellow police officers came out and said, yeah, what he was doing was not by the book. And that right there is going to be a huge factor, I think, the outcome of this.
Yeah, they examined what the book says.
Man,
Scott, you should actually look at the defense, and when they cross-examined the guy who's the training expert, that is an incredible cross-examination of that.
Because I did read. He said that's not how we train people. I've seen that.
Yeah, so he claims that, but the prosecution gets him on a couple technicalities in there where he gets that guy to admit that under certain circumstances this would be allowed, but he kept saying that this was not one of them. You know, like he can imagine a circumstance where an officer might have to do this, but he's saying this was not one of them. But that is a change of the narrative from when they were saying, you know, that this is never used and never accepted, you know.
By the way, can I ask a question? You think he'd have done it differently if he'd had to do it again? He's been in the force for a while. It's not like he's a 20-year-old. You know what I mean? It's like, well, no, I probably likely do it again. That's all I know. It's not his first arrest. He probably did it 1,000 times. You get what I'm saying?
Well, don't say probably. We have a public record of how many he's done of X, right?
No, he's been in the force for a while, so he must have done an arrest. I don't have to go out there.
No, but you said
he's didn't he actually have like previous complaints of excessive force?
He did, but all of that stuff is just, you know, it doesn't mean that he committed murder, right?
Exactly. In the same way that it doesn't mean
I'm saying he managed
sort of thing, like the same way.
Did he kill all those people that he arrested too?
No, in the same way that doesn't mean when the defense tries to say, oh, he had a past drug addiction and he was on drugs right now. That didn't necessarily, like, he could have lived through that, you know. And it does that sort of is a double-edged sword, because that is something that you do hear a lot, because like, oh, well, this person did this, that, and the other thing in their past, so that means that they were a bad person, you know.
Right.
I do think people fall into that that same trap, just on the other side. And I agree with you on that. It's definitely a double-edged sword people get sucked into.
It's like Casey Anthony, you know, she's innocent, but you know, no sympathy is going to be felt for her. And
I have sympathy and empathy
I
for
get
every
why.
human being, dude. In my world.
That's the thing, yeah.
You feel that way
with
Scott,
like
and Casey Anthony?
Well, O.J. Simpson, Casey Anthony, that they're both they both came out innocent. I don't think they were innocent, me personally. That's just my own personal opinion. That has nothing to do with anything now. That's just how it is. You know, they're proven innocent. That's how it is. There's no way around it.
Oh, okay.
And no matter how much somebody might be like, oh yeah, she was definitely guilty, I wasn't fucking there. I don't fucking know. So,
okay, I thought you probably thought she was innocent, and because even if I thought she was innocent, and I still wouldn't have sympathy for her, even if if the court like said like, okay, well, this and this happened, then you know she's completely innocent. So you know, but if she's like like mistreated and who she comes across, I'm not talking about like beat up senselessly. I'm just talking about, you know, nobody's rolling out the red carpet for her, you know. I'm not gonna like feel any type of way.
Nivek, but if someone spit in her coffee, would you warn her?
Yeah.
I need to know.
But I don't drink that.
Actually, I'd be against that. Yeah.
There we go.
Because yes, you shouldn't do that. But I mean, like, but just going off of, because I don't have to think through my emotions.
What about Hitler, Nivek? If someone spit in Hitler's glass, would you tell him?
Wow, a person that wanted to. Actually, I think probably Hitler had have to give him. Come on.
Just watch him drink a little
bit. This is Hitler
go.
Before he did anything bad too. Like,
I see.
Go back. Yeah, he'd go back. Would you prevent that?
I see the kill the baby Hitler scenario. It's a baby, but he's going to grow up to be Hitler.
So let's be honest. So like when Hitler was Hitler, you wouldn't have got anywhere near him for anybody to spit in his tea. You know.
I wonder
he had that shit locked down.
I wonder how many of his people that were close to him thought about it. Just like, man,
I
I just want to be the
know.
one guy who spat in his tea.
I think it probably could have might have happened. You never know.
No, dude. Well, Hitler was on a bunch of methamphetamine, so he probably checked his tea like methodically to like see if there's anything in there, and it's if somebody's spitting there, he's probably killing people.
Maybe he just needed some antidepressants. He wouldn't have fucking had all those Jews eradicated.
You guys just don't understand Germans. They don't spit tea. They do a schwi-
Do a what?
Oh, I lost you, Doolittle. What was that?
The Germans don't spit people's tea. They do a schwizzle stick.
Oh, they do. You got to stir their tea with your dick, but that's gonna be fucking hot, dude. It'll be like that episode of It'll be like that episode of Game of Thrones when they all come out and each one takes a turn at stabbing Jon Snow for the wall or whatever. Yeah, so everyone's doing the swizzle stick in the drink one by one.
Well, that's a rip off of God. What was the play? Shakespeare, Julius Caesar, et tu, Brute.
Yeah.
Ides of March.
I like those.
How's it going there?
Basically, a rip off of Ides of March.
Yeah, to go there.
Hey, Derry. How you
ready
thinking about
you ready to send it? You ready to send it, eh?
I wanna get Bruce there to send it. So Bruce, we're going to transport to a hypothetical universe where Derek Chauvin gets released, no charges, and he's free to go. He gets kidnapped by people claiming to be Black Lives Matter, and 2 days later, a video surfaces on the internet of him being hung in front of a crowd of people in kind of a secret location. And that video starts circulating around the internet. What do you think the general attitudes would be towards that video, and what would your attitude be?
Oh, yikes. Everything else happened the way that it happened. We know
Sure.
know all the same history.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, at that point, I would say the gloves have now been taken off as far as vigilante justice is concerned. And if this is okayed by most of culture and society, we are now back in the Wild West. And if you stay strapped or get clapped, that would be my same reaction,
dude.
Yeah, that would be
the bumper sticker right there, dude. Bruce 2024. Stay.
I would say
stay
it's
strapped
probably
or
the
get
same.
clapped.
It would probably be the same feeling that people had up until the modern era. I would say if you lived in Texas in the 1870s or the 1850s, you probably had the same feeling. It's like, boy, I better keep my shit together, and I hope I don't cross anyone because they might hang me.
So if someone you kind of knew posted something on social media that basically they posted a link to the dark web link to the video of him getting hung and been like, oh, I fucking loved this video. I'm so happy we hung this fucker. And you felt compelled to comment on social media. What do you think your comment would look like?
Oh boy. I would say, let's please point out I would quote the Bible and say, let's point out the speck in your plank in your own eye before pointing out the speck in someone else's. That's what I would say.
Yeah, you can't take a plank out of your own eye while there's a great plank in your own is the exact quote, I think.
It depends on what, but it's like you look at the speck of, they translate it to sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I would say something along those lines. I wouldn't, may not be a quote, but it'd be like, it's easy to celebrate these what you would consider to be missteps or injustice from the other side. but nobody is free of these mistakes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
What's your view on Chauvin, and how would you feel towards him if that happened?
What do you mean? Like, how would I don't.
Because
I don't know.
Bruce, he's gone through like the legal process, right? He's been found that he didn't do anything. He didn't murder. He didn't do anything wrongful. So he's gone through the system, and then he finds himself being hung by his own citizens after he had been found, free of crime under the law.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm asking him what's his opinion
just
towards
one second,
Chauvin,
Vic.
and
I just
how
want
would
to
he
get
feel?
Bruce's response, and then we'll open it up.
I would say that if the people if we have decided that this is justice in our country, then anyone going outside of that is breaking the law in the same way, if not worse, than the initial claim. So all those involved would also be up for trial. The same way. They'd all be guilty.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
because of what we currently have. They'd all be guilty.
Right.
Just because you don't like a verdict,
that's called.
Yeah, technically it is
justice.
wrong to do that. But I'm asking you is what's your opinion on Chauvin, and how would you feel if he was wronged afterwards? Like, how's your opinion? What's your opinion on the case?
Like, same way currently?
Like, what happened? How do you feel in how he handled it, and the outcome towards Chauvin, and how would you how would you feel towards him? If I get that technically it's wrong, but how would you feel towards him? Would you feel sympathy towards him?
I mean, if he was killed,
or would you be like, well, you're not gonna like cry over that?
No, I'd be upset for him and his family and everyone else involved. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone wants to see that.
You're addressing the after. I asked you before. How did you feel about him handling the whole thing?
What happened with George Floyd?
Of that guy ended up of Floyd ended up dying. What's your opinion towards Floyd? Towards Chauvin? Did he it's what he had to do? Like what's your opinion on where you stand?
I don't blame Chauvin as much as I blame the system in which they're placed, the police and Floyd. I think he's in a lose-lose situation, and that's the unfortunate pickle that they've placed him in, considering the situation. So he's not, he's nothing more than a patsy in the entire scheme, in my opinion.
Okay, he could have probably. I get he did what he had to do technically, and he's in the right. But I mean, like, as in going about it, probably could have done this and could have done that. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, yeah. I mean, like, it's like if he was more considerate, probably wouldn't have. They're probably, because it's not like his first arrest. So if he was more considerate in his approach,
the one thing I'll say is,
it
if
probably
how can he
wouldn't have.
be
Let me
more
finish.
considerate?
Is there a history?
Let me finish.
He has a history, though, right?
Yeah, he has a history, and I'm just talking about your personal feelings. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah. I just I don't know that he's in any situation that's. I don't know what else to do in that situation. You can throw him in the car and try and see his. I honestly don't know what situation to be in. I think that cops are in an impossible position, and unfortunately, somebody died in this situation. But I don't know that we can. Yeah, I don't. I mean, like I said, what we're doing now and putting him through trial, is the only way. Is the only recourse we have, or that anyone has. So, But unfortunately, it's hard to have an unbiased trial considering the nature of the case and its public, spectacle. So I don't think you're going to have
I
a fair
get you.
trial.
He's in a tough spot, and what can you do? And all of a sudden he's being hanged, and poor guy. He's got a family and everything, and it's just fucked up. I get you.
Yeah. It's not really much different than a natural disaster, as far as I'm concerned. But now, in the same way, I'll say, I do think that hanging as a deterrent works in some ways. So, I don't know that vigilante justice is the thing to do there, but I can see.
Oh, you're siding with the hanging?
Not. I mean, if it were done as a part of the legal process, yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. Mm-hmm. Can I ask? What if people thought that he was guilty and he got off? How would they feel? But I mean, like the process. I tell you, I tell you my feelings. Like, well, no. I mean, the law's the law, and you go by it. And, I bit the bullet on how I felt. I was like, well, no, it's just wrong. If they
How about this for a hypothetical? What if? What do you think about the possibility that with what's been going on with the civil unrest and everything that's been going on currently, if the judge were to call it a mistrial due to the corruption of what's going on the objective you could say that if the jury cannot be considered objective and the judge thinks that the trial's been compromised, he just calls it a mistrial and they have to start all over. What do you think would happen then?
I think you're going to see a serious amount of virtue signaling across the board and possibly rioting.
Yeah, anything but a guilty verdict is going to be rioting.
That's somewhat of a hypothetical. We don't know, but if someone, let's just say hypothetically, he's found innocent or mistrial, you'll have riots at the courthouses, burning down of whatever, maybe not burning down, but at least riots, I would say, or large amounts of protest.
No, you'll see random cities being burnt down as well.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. I'm trying to be a little more charitable.
I like Sue's hypothetical of what if it was a bunch of Klansmen in the what do you call it, in the bench. There's a jury, or a bunch of guys wearing swastikas. What was your view of the outcome of? I mean, the law.
Well, that's fair. That's
right?
fair, right?
Technically,
that's fair. He's entitled to a jury of his peers.
Or you flip it. You see Black Panthers and and.
Yeah.
Weren't there a lot of people screaming to get off his neck? Like a whole mob?
Yeah.
I think
it's always the right thing for the police to do what the mob screams at him to do.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Get off his neck.
What's the situation if he arrests him at all, and he used some force to get him to comply, which is within the law, and then he puts him in the car and he dies anyway? Is there still not a case that would be made that there was some force prior to that caused this? Do you see? I feel like he's somewhat damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, because of the situation the guy was in, as far as his his condition, the guy's condition.
Well, if they can demonstrate without a reasonable doubt that the knee on the back of the neck was the cause of death, he's gonna, eventually, whatever court proceedings they have to go through, is going to have to, they're going to have to charge him with something if he was the one that caused the death, right?
Yeah, that would be true. Yep.
Yeah.
So here's a hypothetical that can help you decide whether the guy's a murderer or not. Okay, I think this is legitimate. If someone like my size, I'm about the same size as George Floyd, but with about 30 pounds of extra gut. If a 140-pound, 5'4" guy kneeled on my neck for 6 minutes, because that's the point where George Floyd died, apparently, not 9, but the 6 minutes with a 140-pound guy putting partial weight on my neck with one knee, and sometimes that was on the shoulder blade, sometimes it was on the neck, and so you got me with that 140-pound guy on my neck on one hand, and then at the same time take any person and give them 3 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. Who do you think dies? Who do you think is more likely to die? Let's just say I'll give you the option of which of those scenarios you would rather be in. Would you rather be knelt on your neck by a 140-pound guy, or would you rather be given 3 times the lethal dose of fentanyl? And if you choose the second one, then you probably think that Chauvin is guilty.
Well, it depends on how much fentanyl you've done in your past.
3 times the lethal 3 times the lethal dose.
It depends
It's
on how
already
much your
it's already
tolerance
it's already
is.
adjusted. It's already adjusted. No tolerance.
Well, hang on a minute. Just because you've done it before doesn't mean you're somehow immune to it. Your body would actually do more damage over time if you do it.
You don't understand tolerance. Tolerance is the additional amount you need to take to feel the beneficial effects. It does not affect the lethal dose.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, so basically the argument that you're trying to broach is saying, oh, because this circumstance that happened that this person was in, because they come in contact with another person that put force on them, that no longer that person who put force on them, that they're no longer culpable for anything that happened, because everything that happened, everything is all related to them doing this thing in the first place. That's a terrible argument.
No, I think that's a straw man. You're straw manning me.
No,
that's not fair. That's not fair.
Well, hold on.
That's
You're saying because George Floyd was under the influence of fentanyl is why he died. It's not because.
No, he's not saying that. He's saying there's reasonable doubt because he may have died from the drugs and not the knee.
I'm saying I would hypothesize that if you would rather have someone kneel on your neck than take a lethal dose of a lethal drug, then you should be likely to judge that that Chauvin is innocent. And I think that if you would rather,
hold on.
If you would rather take the lethal dose, then you think
hold on. That is sort of a faulty proposition, because you can say somebody kneels on my neck for how long? 10 seconds?
No, it's
3 seconds.
So you're a person half your
a
weight,
minute,
putting less than half their weight on your neck.
For how long though?
For
how
6
long?
minutes.
So,
for 6 minutes. That's how long
6
it took
minutes.
to kill him.
So let's be generous. Let's cut it in half. For they're saying 9 minutes right now. Like somebody putting their knee on your neck for
No, they're saying he died in 6 minutes.
7 minutes 45 seconds.
No, they're saying he died at 6 minutes.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if you've ever been put in a chokehold, but if you were put in a chokehold for 6 minutes,
I used to do wrestling and all kinds of sports, and I've been in all kinds of physical altercations.
Okay, to your scenario,
I've been choked. I've been choked out within about 30 seconds. And so you can go dark in 30 seconds. So what do you think
You can go
happens
dark
to
in 3
somebody?
seconds.
Yeah, what do you think happens to somebody in that situation?
If you're
If
getting
you
choked, if you're
go for
actually getting
6
choked out, you
minutes,
go dark in
you're
about 3
dead.
seconds.
Yeah, and you're dead in
But
6 minutes.
he wasn't
Period.
dark in 3 seconds.
Well, exactly. So now
Therefore, he
we're
wasn't getting choked.
we're getting to like really weird fucking like minuscule details.
So you've been choked.
He's
You know
trying
how long
to
it
switch
takes to go
around the
dark.
cause
And
of
at
the
3
death.
minutes, he was still crying for his mama. So no, he was not getting choked. If you're getting choked, you go dark in 3 seconds.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean
so he was not dark in 3 seconds.
That
Therefore,
doesn't
he's
mean
not
there's
getting choked.
that doesn't mean there's not restriction. And restriction over time is anybody who understands this kind of shit. Like restriction over time absolutely affects
Wim
that.
Hof could hold his breath for 6 minutes.
Oh yeah, good for him. What does that have to do with the fucking
I'm
fucking human? What does that have to do with fucking you or me?
He's doing a great line scenario. Beating a guy with a bat that has.
Which one is greater? That's the question.
So you throw out like a freak of a human being like Whiff, Hosted, and say, "Oh, he can do
you're
it."
strong. You're strong.
No,
to
dude.
unstrongman myself.
No, that was a whack fucking addition. That made no sense.
So
He didn't mean to kill
let's
him.
go back. Let's go back. Doolittle do you think that was an absurd example to bring up? Will or what's
Wim
that guy's
Hof.
name? Wim
It's
Hof.
Wim Hof. Oh yeah, that's absurd.
Wim Hof is the freak
No,
of nature.
Oh,
breathing.
Bruce. I don't know if you know.
Yeah.
By the way, everyone.
He climbs in boxers on fucking Mount Everest and shit. Like the dude's a fucking
just one
freak
sec.
of nature.
Just quick plug.
Right, so
Wim Hof.
Scott has
just one sec,
stated
Doolittle.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to say Wim Hof is just so considering we brought him up is going to be coming on the podcast and the Pangburn Q&A at some point within the next 2 months, which is going to be fucking awesome. So you guys, if you need more incentive than that, go to pang-burn.com/subscription to sign up, and you'll get to sit down and banter with Wim Hof. If you don't know who Wim Hof is, fucking go look up his shit,
Look
man.
that shit up.
This guy hiked Everest in his fucking ginch.
Yeah, he's been submerged in ice water for I forgot how long, dude. It's a crazy amount of time.
Yes,
I mean, he's
insane
a freak.
amount of time.
He's a freak.
Yeah.
He's like David Blaine, but not an illusionist.
Well, he goes into water that's freezing cold and stays there like 3 times longer than they say somebody's going to go into hypothermia.
It's really impressive.
Right out and he's like, it's a goddamn dude.
And didn't Bruno say that he stuck his hand in boiling acid?
No.
Yeah. No, that's the point where I said Bruno's like, no, Bruno said something about like boiling oil or something. I was like, no, that didn't happen.
Bruno, jump on, defend yourself.
I don't remember that. I'm not going to get into this. We got into this last night.
So just say feudalism, Bruno.
It was, and I never said it was Wim Hof. It was a bloody monk who practices asceticism, whatever. But yeah.
So I thought you
so
said Wim Hof.
So the hypothetical situation, you have 2 different potential causes, right? And if you hypothetically took 3 times the lethal dose of fentanyl, and because it was measured in his blood concentration, so you can't say, oh, maybe he metabolizes it faster. He had 3 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. What's the probability that a person lives through that? And if you think that that's vanishingly small, then I think you should be less willing to declare anything else as the cause of death. When
don't cops prepare for that stuff, that there's a possibility of like, it's kind of like saying I beat the guy with the baseball bat, but I didn't mean to kill him. Scenario.
No, it's not like that. I'm talking about a hypothetical situation.
No.
Different hypothetical situations in the absence of the other causes. Okay, so
I beat a guy with a heart condition. I beat a guy with a baseball bat with a heart condition.
You're not listening.
Yeah,
the hypothetical situation is there's 2 possible causes, and if we were to hypothetically separate them into 2 different situations, one situation is a person takes 3 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. Another situation is a guy's getting squished.
Ask me how my scenario is different.
If
Tell me
you
how my
think
scenario
that,
is different.
if you think that the three
Hold
times the
on.
lethal dose of fentanyl is very highly likely to kill the person, which to me, I think it's nearly 100% that George Floyd would have died no matter what Chauvin did.
So I want to
The
see.
lethal dose of fentanyl
So once you're bringing it back to George
entirely
Floyd,
sufficient to kill him.
well, where is this 3 times the lethal amount of fentanyl?
That's what they're saying. That's how much it was in his blood. 3 times the lethal. 3 times the lethal dose.
Oh, he was on his way to die.
Now
it takes like 50 micrograms of fentanyl to kill a man. It's a freaking crazy lethal drug. It's incredibly dangerous. And he was on fentanyl, and then he ate, and then when he got caught, he ate some more.
I want to know who put the drug
everything that
inside
I'm
him to
looking
begin
at,
with.
I'm not sure where you're getting your information from. I'm actively looking this up right now, and I'm not finding anything.
Looking up,
so Doolittle and Scott. Doolittle and Scott, if you guys could research that and get back to us. I just want to get Dave's take on the. What's that?
Yeah, no, please, yeah.
I just want to get Dave's take. Dave, well, first of all, Dave, you're in law school. How has it been for you to experience these litigators bashing it out on the public live stream like this? I assume you've been watching.
There we go. Yeah, I've been watching some of it. It's not discussed as much as you might think. But I've been watching some of it. I'm familiar with the whole situation, obviously, and the charges.
Right, and just before we get into the hypothetical, where you sit right now, when you evaluate what's going on, is there reasonable doubt for Derek Chauvin here so far?
Yeah, I'm not privy to all the details, and I haven't watched all of the prosecution's case and all that. I think that the charges, what's required for so he's indicted on, like 3 different accounts, or 3 different counts, which are different offenses, and I'm not sure that it's going to be easy for the prosecution to meet its burden on any of those murder charges. Certainly not for the higher ones.
Right.
I don't think they're going to be able.
Where are you guys posting things for the chat? Test your skepticism. I've got the
on Discord,
I've got the actual
test your skepticism. Yeah.
I've got the actual attachment of the press release report from the doctor who gave
Which doctor? The doctor that was hired by his family, or the doctor that was hired by the defense?
This is the Hennepin County medical examiner.
Well, let's
jump into that. Gives you the information.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Let's jump into that in a minute. I want to get Dave's take on the hypothetical. So, Dave, hypothetically, Derek Chauvin gets off free of charge, no charges. He walks out. He then gets kidnapped by people claiming to be Black Lives Matter. A video pops up 2 days later of him being hung in this communal way with people chanting Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. And that video surfaces on the internet, a couple days later. And I just wanted to get your take. What do you think the social attitudes towards that video would be, and what would your attitude be?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if the first part of that happened, which is that he's acquitted. That won't surprise me all that much. I'd be moderately surprised. I think it's like 50-50, somewhere around there. The part about him being kind of lynched, essentially, or like hung or something like that by a mob, it's definitely possible. I think there'd be a horrifying amount of support for it. Not as much support as there is support for him being convicted and incarcerated, but there would still be quite a substantial amount of support for it. I would be terrified if that happened. That would be kind of a sign that we no longer live in a society of laws.
Right. So, Dave,
when
and so one other thing about this that I wanted to ask you. Now, how would you feel about seeing people, like just general people you might know, saying, here's the link to the hanging. I thought it was great. The fucker deserved it. How would you feel a moral responsibility to respond and fight against this? Or would you kind of be like, well, I hope this doesn't get worse than it is now? Or would this be a line for you as a citizen where you would feel like you would need to, mobilize in some way, at least to the point where you would need to be active discussing this with people?
Yeah, it is a line. I think that
I can't hear you, brother.
Oh, it is a line for me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, it is a line. I think that if you don't have law and order, you don't have any structure of society at all, and the whole thing comes crashing down. The second people can no longer, the second people start taking retributive justice into their own hands is the second that society, becomes entirely disjointed. So it's definitely a big line. As to whether or not he deserves it, I think that question, setting aside the issue of moral desert, whether or not moral desert exists, like you could say that he deserves it, even if he was acquitted, but that it's still wrong to do it, or to disseminate the images, or to support that it happened. He could deserve punishment if he actually acted maliciously toward this man, and he could be acquitted for it and still deserve the punishment. But that doesn't mean that we can then, it would still be wrong to support anybody or any group taking a proprietary command of law and order. That the power of life and death and the power of the sword, really, the state has to have a monopoly on justice, and there has to be, or a monopoly on violence, and there has to be a stringent legal system for deciding what somebody's fate's going to be. And the value in that sort of thing is totally separate from whether or not Derek Chauvin would deserve anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Antonin, I want to get you. Go ahead, Scott. What?
I was going to say, it sort of got off road there before. Yeah. Please, Antonin, go ahead.
Yeah. Antonin, you're up there, brother. What are your answers to this hypothetical? Antonin, go ahead.
Which hypothetical? Sorry, I was a bit.
Oh, you weren't listening?
Someone texted me.
Sorry. Sorry, can you do a mic test for me?
Hello?
Yeah, that's good. Just make sure you're speaking, right into the mic. Well, the hypothetical is if Derek Chauvin was found to be not guilty by the jury and the judge, and he was released and then later kidnapped by a group of people claiming to be Black Lives Matter, and then a video surfaces on the internet of them hanging him while chanting Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, and that gets circulated around the internet. What do you think the social response would be, some of the different social responses, and what would your response be?
I think other people would agree with it, especially the ones who think Chauvin is guilty. Well, I think my response would be, I'd be really horrified if they do that. I mean, you know how people say, like, you can't act like the judge, jury, and executioner, and by law he is, he's innocent, like, regardless of what we believe, and most of us think he is innocent, I think. Well, I saw the video, but I don't know, it's kind of hard to make an opinion on it, because most of what I see is they think he's guilty of what he did. Sorry, I think I'm rambling.
Do you think changes should be done to policing?
No, that's fine, Antonin. Thanks for that response.
Yeah.
Feel free to open it up again, guys. I know. Can we clarify the data point that Doolittle and Scott were talking about?
I do want to say what Bruce posted. Bruce specifically posted something that it said from the
recent
official report that it was caused by police restraint and neck compression is why he died. And then
the official report was died of cardiopulmonary arrest while being restrained. Cause of death, neck compression, significant conditions was fentanyl intoxication.
Yep. And so when I looked this up, his blood was drawn immediately after the death at Hennepin County Medical Center. The official autopsy report shows a concentration of 11 nanograms per millimeter. How much is that? Handwritten notes taken when the medical examiner briefed prosecutors, and the findings suggested it was very high, but not necessarily fatal. If he
There's
were
also
found
meth in his system.
Yeah, if he were found dead at home and no other apparent causes, this could be acceptable to be called an OD. The note says deaths have been certified with levels of 3 nanograms per millimeter. The note indicates, but I'm not saying this killed him, and that's where you get. This is what I was pointing out, Doctor. Like tolerance does have an effect on heroin.
But if you read that and it says, "I'm not,"
that knows he's being watched.
No,
I'm not saying it's killing him.
No,
that's couching.
Just 2 seconds. Let's get Doolittle's response. I just can't hear Doolittle. Doolittle, you're
go
quiet.
ahead, Doolittle. Yeah, it's hard to hear you.
So when you're reading these public statements, you're reading a note from an actor who knows he's being watched.
Oh, so you know better. You're the one that knows what's really.
No, if I read a note on what's the fatal level of fentanyl, and it says 3, and the guy's got 11, that's a lot more than the fatal level. Okay, and then you're reading the emotional virtue signaling that someone writes at the end of the note, where he knows he's being watched, so he has to say, I'm not saying it killed him, because if he comes out and says the fentanyl killed him, then Derek Chauvin gets acquitted.
Yeah.
And guess what? The doctor gets murdered too.
There would be no reason to say.
Hold
that's
on.
the hypothetical situation.
So you're talking about straw manning, but all of a sudden,
the guy would.
We're talking about a hypothetical.
Hold on. Please, guys, stop. You're talking about straw manning, and all of a sudden you're saying, like, when some medical examiner writes something down, that they're not going to actually write down what they really believe, because they have this weird fucking like ether behind them that's going to tell them to be woke or some shit. Like that's fucking stupid as fuck.
Wait a second, man.
That's
wait a second.
Let's
think about why would a medical
examiner. Let's keep it in good faith, guys. Keep it in good faith.
Why would a medical examiner need?
Go ahead.
Why would a medical examiner? This is what's strange. If someone has experience in this, they could talk to it. There would be no need for medical examination to couch what they say in any way. They would just present their findings and be done with it. So they could leave the statement as is. That was so. The point is, if it says if that's what they're saying, right? As far as medical diagnosis, anything after that is commentary. So what is the point of the commentary? No, but the point of the commentary is shouldn't be admissible. That shouldn't be admissible. There should be no reason to listen to and or read commentary outside of verifiable facts. So if the verifiable fact is that's the situation, and for them to
more than 3 times the lethal
if wokeism manipulates things, the law's the law. You got to deal with it.
So we just established that the fact is that the concentration
was not more than 3 times
what would be considered a lethal dose.
No,
3 milligrams to 11, right? So
3 to 11, more than 3 times the lethal dose.
It's almost 4 times.
So the hypothetical stands: would you rather take more than 3 times the lethal dose of fentanyl, or would you rather have someone kneel on your neck? And it's clear that you would rather have someone give you more than 3 times the lethal dose.
I mean, whether or not
have someone kneel on
that argument still goes against the cop, because he'd be messed up physically in how he is. He'd be limp.
there would be no need to put fucking force on the
But
guy
this is
to begin
kind
with.
of like here's the thing. This is kind of like the COVID scenario where somebody has obesity and other congestive heart failure, and then they get COVID, and then cause of death is COVID. Cause of death is COVID, but in normal circumstances nobody dies from COVID. But these people do because they're obese or have congestive heart failure.
Can I say something?
So
Everybody has a level of
but that is-
pre-existing conditions. All human beings, 100% human beings, have a level. If they go
Yeah,
under
so
a certain amount of stress,
some
they will
level of
die of something. They
pre-existing
will die of a
conditions.
heart issue that is not as strong, or something, whatever is less likely.
Everybody dies. Yeah.
You put enough pressure to whatever is least likely healthy within that human being, ends up being the cause of the death of that human being.
So if you say
natural
the cause of
situations,
death,
they wouldn't necessarily die, but under enough pressure, yes, they die of whatever, a brain hemorrhage or they're strong, or heart not necessarily being as strong. You know, there's a lot of, trust me, you guys have it. You just don't know you have it.
That's the thing. Like people with diabetes.
If you get COVID,
can
you're gonna die of something
septicism
pre-existing within you.
The last thing that happened on the Titanic before it sank was a welder left on the last lifeboat as he was abandoning ship. Did the welder sink the Titanic?
Right. No.
The welder
that's ridiculous.
Could not have saved the Titanic.
Right.
And I don't think that Derek Chauvin could have saved.
I'm attacking your COVID.
Here's the problem, though, man.
That is a whack ass fucking analogy.
Okay, let Scott, then Bruce. Hey guys, just hang on. Let Scott first, and then Bruce.
Dude, that is a terrible analogy to compare fucking Chauvin to an iceberg. It's not the iceberg fucking was like imposing a force on this thing. It was this body unintentionally hit an iceberg, as opposed to you had a body that was forcefully doing something. Like, dude, of all the analogies,
no, the
like,
iceberg
just
is the iceberg is
basic
the
analogical form that makes zero goddamn sense.
Yeah. So
the Titanic
zero
was going
sense.
down.
Well,
the last thing that happened to the Titanic
that's all I gotta
was
say.
not the iceberg.
Well, the thing that's interesting to me, so where it's really an intention issue. So, for instance, let's say you're accused of cheating on your wife. Now, you haven't cheated on your wife at all. You haven't done anything wrong. But after work, you continually go to like seedy places and bars to hang out. But you never cheat on your wife. Like, it doesn't help your case in any situation. Now, did he intend to cheat on his wife? No. But is he helping his case? No. In the same situation, did he intend to kill the guy? No. Did he kill the guy? Possibly. But was it extenuating circumstances? Yes. Was it a terrible situation for anyone involved? An impossible situation for the police? 100%. But if we're going to go down this whole logical trail, of, the cause of death is the police officer.
So where does the responsibility lie in a cop?
Just wait,
Stop.
The responsibility is unfortunately on the police officer in an otherwise impossible scenario. The fallout of this is would you?
That's true.
The problem with this is going forward from the precedent that this sets in many of the other situations police officers are in. You have an imbalanced police force that has been nerfed. And is that the situation people want to be in?
Now, next, I want to get just a few people who haven't been engaging. So Bruce, Scott, and Doolittle, just take a quick break, and we'll get back to you guys. Mace, what are you hearing?
What's the question?
Oh, Jesus. I thought you were paying attention. Sean, what are you hearing here? Sean mentioned off the rails.
Well, that's the thing, is they're trying to prove intent, because I think he's been charged with third-degree murder. He's been charged with manslaughter, and you have to look at intent to cause harm. And one of the things that we were talking about as far as evidence when it comes to the dude having his knee on his back and his neck and shoulder is, and this is where the reasonable doubt thing comes in, because we've had the clients watching the trial, because this is how we're doing our restoration group right now, is you're seeing this trial unfold. So you're getting the factual information of what a court process looks like, and, the rational questions of, like, does the state have a good case and all of that is the trainer, the one that was talking about that he said that it was absolute what was it, excessive force. But on the cross examination from the defense, the guy actually said that, by all rights, when they had trouble getting Floyd out of his car, he had the right to use the taser but didn't. And so on testimony on record said that Chauvin actually chose a lesser form of force. And so I think that's one of the, I think, key pieces of testimony that I think is going to, put that reasonable doubt in the jury's minds. But, it comes back to what we were talking about too. And I'm sorry if I'm jumping around. It's just there was a lot of things being said, so trying to keep track of it all is kind of difficult.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's all right.
Was now where was I going with this? Oh yeah, we were talking about the medical examiner as an actor close to the case knows that they're being watched. I think we could also say the same for the jury. You have threats of people wanting to burn the city down. You have civil unrest over the most recent shooting that occurred near Minneapolis, near where the trial is taking place. And this is why I think that the trial, is I honestly think a bench trial would have been, I think, the best option, because it is an option, because then the judge has to remain impartial. That's his job. He cannot impose his values at all within the proceedings. It's up to the prosecution to make their case on the evidence at hand, and it's up to the defense to make their argument, and it's whoever tells the best story that fits the evidence is typically where the jury, that's where they deliberate.
Right. I want to get H43Z here. Thanks for joining us. First of all, what do you anticipate the outcome of this case being? Go ahead, H4. H43Z, you are up. You gotta unmute, brother.
It looks like late speak Hayes.
Hayes.
Or Hez.
You're up, Hayes. So Hayes is not ready to give his take yet. Let's go to I wanted to get Dal in. Dal, what are you hearing here?
Oh, that's sure.
Oh, that's cool.
Paging Dasu.
Paging.
There.
Man, it's a tough call. I know it's a little different, but if I ran out and I kneeled on a guy's neck and he died, and then the autopsy found that he was overdosed on drugs, for me, and I think that could be a source of a lot of the duration if he does come out, because a lot of people are of the belief that cops shouldn't be held to a higher standard. It is a tough situation, like Bruce was saying, because it's his job to be there in that scenario, handling it. So it's really a tough call, and I don't know where to stand.
It's a bit of a situation.
Kartik
Rawat.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add that I haven't been watching the case or anything either. So this is all my info is coming from you guys.
Right. I do highly suggest.
Well, Dal, to your point.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott. And then I want to read a comment from YouTube, and then we'll get back. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I would say, Dal, to your point, I 100% agree. Like people in the position of power should be held to way higher a standard, and if they don't meet that standard, they should be pulled out of there, run out on rails. That's it. Like if you want to step to that level to be this be in this position of society, you need to live up to it, and I totally agree with that. If you're going to do anything in power,
are you justifying cops being mistreated in prison?
No, I'm saying if you have any sort of position in the public, like whether you're a politician, a police officer, a fireman, you should be held to a way higher standard. And like we scrutinize politicians for all sorts of shit. But then all of a sudden, when it comes to police officers, everybody, a certain amount of people will be like, oh no, well, they should be able to just get away with whatever they're doing because it's a really tough job. Like, I
Well, you
don't
know
give a
why
shit
that
about
is, though,
that. Like,
man.
they need to be held to a higher standard, period.
Yeah, they do, but the standard is it's difficult because they're in a position. So, well, as far as people are concerned, politicians help themselves, and this as far as the public would be largely concerned. Politicians help themselves. Police officers help us. And that, I mean, not to say that that's the case. I mean, of course,
Yeah,
They're crooked cops out there.
Exactly.
Police,
They're cops
but,
that
but
steal.
by and large, there's bad people. Period. But by and large, the police are very much respected, and probably help more than they hurt. Would be my.
What would you think of a cop that
Nivek,
steals?
2 seconds, Nivek.
absolutely. Yeah,
Nivek, I just wanted to
absolutely.
acknowledge that was a really good question for Scott. Thanks for asking that. Antonin, do you have anything to add here?
No, not really. I'm just listening mostly to you guys.
Okay, cool.
I don't know a lot about the issue. I mean, I'm not from the US, you see, and what I know about the issue, I just get the news, and and a lot of it, well, they're basically condemning Chauvin immediately. Chauvin, how do you pronounce it? Chauvin or Chauvin?
Chauvin.
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 Chauvin immediately. And the same goes to what I see on Facebook. The guy is guilty and end of story. And the other side that I see.
If you can talk closer to your mic, that would be great, man.
Hang on.
You could come in on Saturday. That'd be great.
Hello.
Yeah.
I know it's a day off, and we just want to do a half day.
Bruno, anything to add, Bruno?
Not really. Just listening.
All right.
I want to ask a question.
Let's open it up. Yeah, Nivek, I wanted to give you the floor. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to ask Bruce a question. What do you think? You said cops help themselves. What do you think about? Politicians help themselves. What do you think about cops that steal? Like, do corrupting things?
I didn't say there weren't extenuating circumstances across the board. I'm talking about generally.
What do you think about cops?
You can find
that
examples, outliers, all the time. What do I think about anyone that steals? It's a problem. What do you mean?
All people that steal
a crooked cop that.
What do you think about anything? I mean, there are bad people across all of these, all of society, regardless of the position.
I'm referring to Scott's higher standard argument of a cop that is supposed to uphold the law but doesn't, and he wrongfully arrests people deliberately, and he steals. That's like opposite of everything that.
Well, there is.
So actually, he should get a kick to the nuts for that.
There is precedent in court, and maybe Sean can talk about this. People that are people that are in positions of power, authority, and have trust are held to a higher standard in the court. The judge and the jury will be advised to hold them to. So, like for example, like a large number of white collar crimes happen because people have been placed in a position of trust and power. And so because of that, the responsibility that they hold places them under more scrutiny. So as a deterrent, they are held under a higher standard. Is it fair? Probably.
That's why doctors have the Hippocratic Oath.
Well,
Yeah.
You guys have you guys ever? Do you guys know who Justine Damon is? Mohammed Noor and Justine Damon. Mohammed was a police officer in Minneapolis, and this lady called the cops, and like she was like driving off, like and it was a weird situation. Just started firing into the car, but that's one situation like the police, like everybody always like backs police officers. I found it very interesting in that situation where it was this Somali immigrant who was Muslim. Nobody ever fucking backed him. It was really weird. He just went to jail like fucking that. It was the strangest thing. Well, why do you think that might have been? In that one situation, what do you think that might have been?
Maybe because he's gay. I don't know. What's the reason?
I think Scott's making a racism implication here.
Yeah, I mean, are people biased and are people biased generally? Yeah, I mean, it's a problem.
Exactly.
I mean, you know,
Yeah, it's definitely
but
a
at the
problem.
same time, like, I don't think that you're going to get here's the biggest issue. Like, and I think Sean was bringing this up earlier. I think the jury will be afraid to find this person not guilty. I just think that considering the situation, the jury would be afraid to find him not guilty, regardless.
Ooh, yeah.
You can't. I mean, it's not unbiased.
There is. Yeah.
It's a lose-lose for them, for the jury. I wouldn't want to be on the
How do you
jury.
feel about that?
Absolutely.
How do I feel about the jury?
They just say, you know what, to the what you call it, SJW pressure. They just say that they're just gonna just guilty.
Yeah, I think that's the unfortunate system of justice that we have. There's going to be a lot of winners and losers, and just like, okay, I say this with firearms,
But that's
too.
the justice system. Deal with it, you know.
Yeah, exactly, and I'd say this with firearms too. In order to make an omelet, you're going to crack a few eggs. You know what I'm saying? That's the unfortunate situation we're in. But you know, I like the place we live. I think most people do. I think a lot of the country is in a better position because of the amendments that we are afforded. And so there's some risks that comes along. And innocent people are hurt. That's the unfortunate nature of justice and the unfortunate nature of living in a free society.
That's just the unfortunate nature of reality. I mean, that's just there's no way around people.
Yeah, but I mean, there's
sometime.
Yes, it's life. But you know, the jury's going to be very, very biased. It's just not possible otherwise.
There are people that argue that they're not biased.
That's impossible.
And true justice is impossible.
And just
too.
say
Like,
that's
you
just
realize
that. That's
right?
really justice.
Blind justice, is that what you're looking for?
No, I'm just saying, like, if you say they're influenced by pressure in making the guy be guilty, they'll just say, no, that's not really true. It was just justice.
Actually, you know what? I reckon blind justice would be better if they made it so that they removed the name of the of all the people involved, and then just put the case anonymously to a jury. I actually think that would be much better.
Yeah, I would say so too. But even in the circumstances that would come out, it would be. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find another situation like this. I think unless you can tell me there's a lot of people with fentanyl and being there a knee on the neck happening, you're gonna know what happened. You know
I think they should have BLM members as a jury.
He has a point. It's blind would be better. You wouldn't know their race. You wouldn't know their creed. You wouldn't know their sex, gender. Otherwise, assigned gender at birth, cisgendered, whatever. None of that would be a factor. You know, and you just have the case, and that's it. But you'd also want to see. The thing is, I think the jury system is set in such a way that people want to look at the accused. You know, and you also have the right to a jury of your peers, and so I guess you just take it on faith that they're putting peers in the jury. I don't know. How would you? You know what I mean? Like it truly would be blind, but we have some pieces of precedence there that stops that from happening.
Yeah,
But I get his point.
Prosecution and defense
Go ahead, Sean.
both get to decide the jurors.
In certain cases where you're going to have a lot of sensitivity of the nature of the case, the defense or the prosecution, I think it's mostly on the defense, they can petition for what's called a bench trial.
Yeah.
Where the verdict is decided by the judge, and then depending on the verdict, then the sentence is also meted out by the judge as well. So I think in this instance, with what's in the context of Minneapolis as it stands right now, I don't know why in the hell they went with a jury trial, other than because I mean, I remember from watching the news correctly, there was a couple of jurors already had to be expelled from the jury pool after a couple of days of testimony because of the settlement that came out with that they gave toward George Floyd's family. So when you already have that type of contamination, I don't know how in the hell we're supposed to have the legal system work as the way it's intended to under these circumstances.
We can point to some possible reasons, although people will probably call me a conspiracy theorist. But it's good ratings, dude. It's media. It's money. Like, why would you not want that? This is up there with O.J. Simpson at this point. You know what I mean? Why the money? Follow the money, and it's a lot of media money.
I agree with you that ratings could be one thing to consider as far as the 24/7 coverage that we're seeing on the television. But I mean, the fact that the defense attorneys didn't even try to petition for a bench trial. I don't know, unless they're that confident at acquittal. But I mean, again, when you see the jury selection process being contaminated, that ought to be a big red flag of wait a goddamn minute. Things are not going well.
Yeah. Maybe they're hoping for mistrial, or like you said, a situation where the jury's unreliable. I don't know. Maybe they're better at selecting juries. Like maybe that's their forte in that defense, and they're like, we're gonna get a good jury on this, so we'll go that route.
Jury selection is usually done on a random sample of the population of the area that you lived in. They basically pull by what's the rep of the area that you're pulling from. What's the demographics look like, and then you have to pull random samples of each demographic, and then you have to get a good representation of what that area looks like. So it's not going to be like 50-50 men, women, and then equal across all races. They have to get a genuine sample of what the actual population looks like within that criteria. There's a heavy statistical formula they use for when they're pulling I'm not kidding. It sounds like I'm joking, but I'm not kidding.
No, yeah.
I get what you're saying.
What also is the effect of like maybe like a defense attorney planning for like a plea bargain, and that's what they're going on, and all of a sudden their client says, "No, I'm taking this to court." Do you think that might also be possibly something going on? Because
someone is running
because that's a really big difference of like making a plea bargain versus taking something to court.
Well, the thing is if there was a plea bargain to be offered, you would think that because of the climate that was going on politically, if we really want to look at political implications of the environment bleeding into the court system, then you would think they bloody well would take the damn plea bargain, because then it means that he gets to serve a sentence. There's no trial, and everybody kind of wins. Some more so than others, but.
YouTube, someone posted in YouTube that imagine concern for Dr. Seuss and hypotheticals, but not for real people dying. Assuming that we are conspiratorial, unempathetic, right-wing nutjobs only care about cancel culture, and we don't care about people dying. They're not interested in our thought experiment, it seems.
I'm speaking strictly as someone, as an educator for people with mental illnesses that have to be prepared to go to court. So I had to learn the court processes. Like I have to know my shit to be able to do my job if I'm going to get people to be competent to go to trial.
Agreed. No, I'm just saying, like, this is the sort of emotional response that, like, this is we're unable to have these conversations in the public with people that are emotionally charged the way they are, like this person saying that we can't have discussions around hypotheticals.
Well, fair enough, but also I would say there's also a lot of ignorance, and I don't mean that in an insulting manner, but how many people really know the court system in a way that you can discuss the court system and look at all these? Like, seriously, I mean,
yeah, but I mean, let's be fair and say that it's not exactly a obtainable information easily for most people. You know what I mean? Understanding civics at a base knowledge is even difficult for most people. So getting into the minutia of court trials and juries is just not something people do have the capacity to do. Time, all of those sorts of things.
Most people.
You know what I mean? So as much as I agree with you, people are ignorant because they're busy, not even able to engage due to their intellectual ineptitudes, educational ineptitudes, whatever the case is. So I think that the system itself is complicated. So that's part of the reason why.
Well, it is complicated. I mean, you got to think the most common heuristic that people get for how the trial systems would work is looking at documentaries of cases that have come before, or watching Law and Order and thinking that that's how it kind of works in the real world, which it doesn't.
Yeah, it's not seen it everywhere.
But I mean, I was surprised at how much I had to learn just to function as as an assistant to forensic psychologists.
Mm-hmm.
I was assuming that I was going to be looking at, state of the mind at the time of the offense for people who are chronically and severely mentally ill.
But you're not, right?
I am not on an evaluation team. I don't evaluate people for sanity. I teach people the court system, and I run through hypotheticals, meaning that, like, here's an example with a client with schizophrenia. I'm having to do these hypotheticals of, like, okay, say Bob is convinced that his mother's possessed by the devil. He becomes frightful that she's going to sacrifice him to the devil. He goes into the bedroom, pulls a gun, shoots her. She doesn't die. He gets arrested. So then the questions are, does the state have a good enough case against him to charge him with attempted murder? And then it's like, what should he consider if he's going to plead not guilty? The defense attorney says that they're going to go for the NGRI, which is not guilty by reason of insanity plea. What should he consider if he's going to go down that route? These are the hypotheticals that I run with different clients that I come into contact with to get them ready for court.
Yeah.
And then
I think that's a great exercise that people should engage in, even if they're not in your field.
And so, and then once they get the ability to rationalize through those, then we talk about their case, their charges, what they understand, what's their legal strategy. And what that means is, okay, they're able to show that they can rationally think out and map out the consequences of these different decisions that they're having to make with their attorneys. And it's one thing to sit here and look at a police officer on social media doing something that everybody thinks is reprehensible. It's another thing to sit there and really look at, okay, what the hell's going on? And all these factors, and that's what the court system is to sort out, is what the hell is going on, and then predicated on the evidence, then the decision gets made. There's time. I mean, a lot of people weren't happy that O.J. Simpson was acquitted, but I don't remember.
Except for black folks that were celebrating.
Well, I mean, but I don't remember people threatening to burn down the city if they didn't get the verdict that they didn't want. I was obviously much younger. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the climate was even different compared to the Rodney King thing, because I think the LA riots was contained to California. So and so it wasn't on a worldwide scale, and it wasn't on a nationwide scale. Ferguson, I think, was the most recent one before George Floyd, and that was just confined to Ferguson and the surrounding areas, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong,
the LA riots were not.
Well, we're in the 24-hour news cycle now. We were kind of then, but the information got to people distilled and much later. And also, like, in the 90s, you were pretty friggin' square if you watch the news. Like, young people were not interested in the news in the 90s. It's like, well,
they made us watch. Well, they made us watch the O.J. Simpson trial when I was in elementary school, because they consider it a historical thing, and I think it's because it was the first time a murder trial was shown on the news in the courtroom. I think that was the historical context. Again, I could be wrong, but I was in third grade when we had to watch that. But the George Floyd thing kicked off protests and riots on not just, the local scale, it was on the national scale. And then it wasn't just on the national scale, it actually hit the international scale because there was riots and protests that erupted in England, France, and other countries. So this is completely new. And I don't know what the implications of that is going to be on this court case or any court case that happens in the future. I think that's something that we really need to be aware of and really
it does change a lot of the way juries operate, or can be trusted.
Can you hear me? I agree with you on that one because
I can barely hear you.
I said I agree with you on that, and the reason I agree.
The other guy.
Oh, sorry.
Who said? Can you hear me? Was that Hayes?
Yeah, that's me, Richard. Hi.
Oh,
can you hear me?
What's up, man? Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Now
I have
we
one
can.
question. Didn't George Floyd already, when he was in the car, said he can't breathe?
That's the report. Yeah, the body cam footage said something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah, if you watch the whole video, you'll hear him saying he can't breathe before he's even restrained.
Police officer did anything. Right.
Yep.
That's right.
It's kind of strange because I think most people don't know that, even that little fact that.
No, they don't care. See, the narrative is now. It's like we don't care what he said. We don't care what happened. We don't care what happened before his toxicology. The point is he had his knee on his neck for 9 minutes or 6 minutes, whatever the case was.
We'll say,
and that's all that
Yeah,
anyone.
the symbology of the
don't care.
That's it. Well, at the same time, if you're a cop and you ran into somebody who said, I can't breathe, and they're saying that right away, and then you put your knee on their neck for 6 to 9 minutes, whatever it is, that should be you should not be a goddamn idiot and be like, oh, this guy can't breathe.
Yeah, the situation.
Everybody else was saying that. Yeah. George. Everybody else was saying that.
Fucking stupid. Like, I mean,
I mean, it's not good. It doesn't help.
That doesn't make it any better at all. Like that makes it
but
worse.
you will get in trouble for that, right?
So let me reconcile with.
I think it begs the question a little bit about. Well, I was going to say I think it begs the question a little bit as to police practices generally. So I would imagine this sort of thing happens on a regular basis when you're dealing with people on drugs and other domestic violence situations where people are constantly trying to get out of it, lying, pleading, complaining, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So it's just par for the course for them to just say, hey, man, we don't care.
Yeah,
we've heard it all before. Sit down, shut up. I got my knee on you. That's the end of it. Now, in this case, it went bad. But I think ordinarily that's probably par for the course for them.
But I think you do get to the problem though.
Physically, his body
brought this up before of like apathy and cynicism are not like that. Like that's not an excuse for something. You can't be apathetical and cynical about something and say, oh, well, that's my excuse for what I did.
Physically, he was limping, not resistant.
Because you could say
that's not true at all, Nivik.
Well, you could be like, well, I've been through this certain situation a bunch of times, but all of a sudden I'm just like really apathetical and I'm cynical about it, so I'm just not going to save this person. I'm
not saying that like it's an excuse. I'm just saying that's probably why. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well, another thing
go ahead, Doolittle.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me reconcile with Scott a little bit here because we were arguing over cause and effect, or at least that's what I feel like arguing. But I think I agree with Scott to a large extent. So I just want to say what I think we agree on.
I think so too. Yeah,
I think that the police officer in that situation had 3 duties, okay, and George Floyd probably had 2. Okay, so part of my moralization is the first rule of the road, which is that every captain is responsible for the safety of his own vessel. So George Floyd broke that rule by taking way too much drugs. Okay, so he's in large part responsible for his own death. Derek Chauvin is a police officer, and he had 3 duties as a police officer. His first duty is to protect himself so that he can protect others, and he did that. His second duty was to save the life of the guy that was dying in his custody.
Yeah.
He failed at that. His third duty was to arrest the guy who tried to pass off a fake bill to the store.
Yeah.
So he got his priorities a little bit out of order. George Floyd failed the first rule of the road, and he was wrong. So the way I see it, there's two people that had to fail simultaneously for the death to occur, and I have a really hard time calling that murder.
No, I
But
do.
no one's calling it murder.
But I think I agree a lot with with Scott in that respect.
Yeah, me as well. I think I get where you're coming from. Yeah.
Okay, if his body's that messed up, how strong can he be?
Have you ever dealt with someone on meth?
Have you ever heard of stupid strength?
But also, it's not about strength. I mean, it doesn't. Like I said, it's not.
I get
it's
the
not that
drug
they're
part,
doing
but
that.
Let's just
It's
say
not that they're doing it out of that. It's just that it's
George Floyd. Well,
par for the
George
course.
Floyd is physically stronger than the strongest woman who has ever lived on the face of the earth in all of history. Think about that. And Derek Chauvin is smaller than the average woman.
he's got a shit heart.
Strong,
He's barely and he barely getting any oxygen.
Now
to
that
his
dude
system.
George Floyd was a beast, man. That guy was a freaking. That guy is a very muscular,
He was a big dude.
athletic. He was and athletic. He's
I do think you're forgetting.
They put him in a
German
car,
chicks.
right? They placed him in a car.
I do think you're forgetting German chicks and like some of those girls are
but unsuccessfully in the car.
George. He was limp. They had to put him in a car.
No, dude, you didn't watch the video. He was.
Well, the other thing I'll say is like, how long does it take the effects of fentanyl to start working? If he shoved them in his mouth right before the encounter. So at that point, I suppose.
Instant. Yeah,
but isn't it like
3 to 6 minutes?
Go to sleep, right?
Well, I gotta say,
largely make you pass out.
Well, it depends on like how much you take. Like,
it makes you
so
stop.
This guy took a lot.
My dad
makes you stop breathing.
My dad got
how long
cancer.
until the effects
he
kick in?
broke both of his femurs.
3 to 6 minutes. It peaks at 6 minutes.
Well,
so
my
did
dad
he do the drugs after he went into the shop?
When he was getting arrested initially
in the car.
When he was getting arrested initially, he took the drugs that he had just bought to avoid getting charged. That's what
because
people are saying.
He was acting strangely even in the shop, I think.
He was on methamphetamines.
Okay.
And
so he was first on meth.
The guy in the car was his drug dealer. And he was yeah. I don't know. It's hard to tell what the truth is in this story.
You guys, just a point of clarification here with regards to the drugs. There's been argument as to when the meth or the fentanyl was taken, because there is some video footage that may demonstrate that there were drugs ingested in a hopes of getting rid of the stash or hiding the stash, because there have been some shots that have, something in pill form seems to be like in white kind of puck pill form seems to be on George Floyd's tongue. So again, all of these details and things are being discussed. When we're saying that he was already on X when he entered the store, it's not necessarily what's been demonstrated yet.
No, I didn't say that. I just said he acted strange, like his body movement was weird.
Yeah, no, I wasn't talking to you. I was just saying some of the claims about when he did in fact take what's being called the lethal dose may have in fact been at the last moment in and around the time that he thought he was going to be arrested. And it may have been an act of desperation to get rid of the drugs, to ingest way too much. But this is all being sorted out. At least they're going to try to sorted out as much as they can.
But it makes no sense. I mean, if he wants to get rid of the drugs, were the drugs packaged? Like, did he think he can just poop it out afterwards, or what? Or didn't he think about the consequences? Like,
he was probably panicking.
He might have, right. So this is what they're trying to sort out. Was this taken in a panic? Well, they can't ask him anymore. If they ask if he had drugs on him, there was. They also talk about remnants of certain substances in the back of the car in the time that he spent back there. So they don't know if he was trying to disperse with or do something with something that might have been in his pocket. But yeah, it's, a lot of these things that are just being stated generally, these things are being looked at with the most precise precision that we could look at them.
One thing I would also like to talk about too is, police officers have to try to attempt to anticipate, any citizen's moves and responses, whether they're going to try to de-escalate a situation or if they have to proceed accordingly, which unfortunately can include various levels of force to be used. And we talk about, what was it, Floyd's body movements seemed kind of jerky, and then the types of substances that were in the system. Now, I'm not an expert in pharmacology at all when it comes to like drugs and their effects. So, this is strictly just based on what I know from like looking at substance abuse and mental illness, is that some drugs like methamphetamine, for example, can cause symptoms of psychosis. It's like a drug-induced psychosis, and you're going to get the jerky disorganized motor movements like you see in patients with schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders. There could be hallucinations, delusions, and when your body's in that fight or flight response, your strength can be augmented. And this is not to defend Chauvin's actions at all. It just goes to, this is kind of where it goes into that whole intent thing, that they have to prove his intent to cause harm. For all we know, the intent was just to try to keep Floyd in a position where he was not going to be a danger to himself and other people if he was indeed in a state of drug-induced psychosis.
Yeah. So you're saying like keep him on the ground, stop him from moving. He wanted to get out of the vehicle. They took him out of the vehicle. Let's not let him run into the crowd and start acting like a crazy person. We got to protect him and others. And this is the only opportunity. Sorry, not opportunity, but the only skill that he knew to wield to do that. Is that what you're saying?
That there's a probability that could be the case. Now, the only way that I think we're going to know that for sure is if Chauvin gets on the stand and he testifies and uses that verbiage or something similar. So this is just purely speculation, and that's just predicated on what I know of, when you deal with people that are actively psychotic. And we have to, people in the mental health field are trained in certain types of restraint for individuals when they're having a behavioral crisis if they're actively psychotic.
Hey,
and
I'm watching the video right now.
Hey,
he's on his neck until the ambulance came, and he's still on his neck until the ambulance came.
Yeah. So
and then when he got off his neck, I'm watching. I'm reciting what I'm seeing. When he got off his neck, he was limp.
Yeah. So one sec. I just want to go to Dave quickly. Dave, if you were Derek Chauvin's lawyer, would you be advising him to take the stand?
I am no lawyer yet, but it certainly seems like that might be a good idea. What Sean was saying earlier about the intent issue, right? That's going to be a big deal, and it kind of seems difficult to determine what was going on inside of his mind. But the jury is going to have to decide what was going on inside of his mind, and if they don't find that he was intentionally, I don't think anybody thinks he was intentionally attempting to kill George Floyd, which is why they dropped the murder one charge. But if they also don't think he was intentionally committing a felony assault or intentionally committing a misdemeanor assault, or if they don't think he was at least reckless, that I think the language they use in Minnesota is recklessness that demonstrates depravity and disregard for human life. if they don't think that any of those features of his mind are applicable, then they're not going to be able to find for any of the murder counts. And that's on top of the causation problem, which would negate the criminal act entirely if it's the case that he didn't actually cause or proximately cause the death. I mean, I'm not convinced beyond reasonable doubt about any of this. And I mean, it might be the case that he intentionally killed him. And the second I see more evidence, coming to that conclusion, I'll change my mind. But, I mean, they're going to have to have to be confident beyond reasonable doubt with respect to causation and intent and recklessness or intent. And I think the defense is making arguments, with respect to each of those. And I think if Derek Chauvin gets on the stand and he can communicate in a way that the jury is convinced that he's being honest, that he was following what he thought was protocol to keep someone they'd arrested who was on drugs safe. And I think there was some discussion that that's what they were trying to do. Then that might go a long way towards the intent thing. So I'm not going to be surprised at all if there's a not guilty verdict, and I'm worried what's going to happen if there is. The intent is going to be big.
Do you think it would be justified for people to shoot people that loot their stores when this happens?
When I do have a question for you about qualified immunity. Like, what do you think? What do you think about that? Like, because that's I think that's sort of the point that you're getting to, is like, with police, there's a certain qualified immunity that they can get away with doing this certain thing that somebody who was not put in that position at the same time, they would be convicted, right?
Somebody? What do you mean somebody?
So somebody who takes certain actions that the results end up with somebody losing their life. You have a lot less leeway than you do as a police officer, because the police officers have qualified immunity. And
They're in a situation,
Yeah. Well, it's been expanded a lot since that initially came into place. So. But
that's
I
probably why they're not at murder one. You know what I mean? That's part of the reason why.
Yeah, exactly. But that's I mean, that's why
One, they would need to show.
With, that's why you can't even prosecute an officer on negligent homicide, because they have qualified immunity. So even if a police officer they acted negligently and somebody died, they could not be prosecuted for it because of qualified immunity.
They put themselves in that situation because they're a cop. Another person's.
Well, they don't put themselves in the situation. The state puts themselves in that situation, or the people employing them put them in that situation. I mean, yes, they are technically volunteering their services as an employee, but the state decides what you do and how you do it.
We ask them to be in that situation as a society.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I mean.
And,
the state,
exactly.
Society,
and there's a certain degree of
against the state, right? In most cases, if it's against another person, it would just be civil.
No, not necessarily. There could definitely be criminal charges applied to negligent actions for a citizen as opposed to a police officer. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, with respect to murder one,
what about
I think the reason they
hold on, Navid. Dave, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, with respect to murder one, I don't think they have enough for murder one on the facts here, even if he wasn't a police officer, because you'd have to show intent in conscious objective with respect to death. That's what murder one, which is a capital offense, is reserved for. Exactly. Usually it's reserved for premeditated murder, where you thought this through and you intentionally ended somebody's life. And if imagine it was a citizen's arrest and somebody was just holding him down, waiting for the ambulance that they called. It's still waiting on murder one, probably. Exactly. You wouldn't think that they intended it. Qualified immunity.
are they trying him on murder one? I thought they reduced.
They initially were. They dropped it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Murder 2, which is, I think murder 2 in Minnesota is felony murder, which is kind of this uncommon doctrine where you're liable for a murder that occurs while you're attempting or intentionally committing a felony. So there they'd have to show that he was intentionally committing a felony assault.
Exactly.
And I'm not sure that you have that either. That's kind of tough in this case. The other charge is murder 3. And murder 3 is depraved heart murder in Minnesota, which means you need to show recklessness in such a way that it manifests a depravity and a disregard, a wanton disregard for human life. I mean, do you think that's present here?
I would say no.
I'm not so sure. I'm definitely not sure beyond a reasonable doubt.
But does a person's history come into play on this as a character? Does the character come into play?
It's got to be impossible to get that if you've already called an ambulance for someone.
From the gate, yeah. But I mean, isn't there? There's got to be some character assassination on the person's history, right?
If you called an ambulance and you still had your knee on their neck that entire time, that might be an indicator of the opposite.
I mean, what's reasonable to do while an ambulance is on the way?
Exactly. Well, if you already realize maybe somebody's having like health troubles, so you call an ambulance to like take care of them, but you still have your knee pressed on their neck over that entire time. That in itself, I mean that's.
I watched the video. The ambulance guys got out, and that's when they nudged him aside for him to get his. That's when the knee got off the neck at that point, and he stayed limp.
It's a tough.
The case that Minnesota Police Department policy is that a subject that's been subdued under, suspicion of some kind of drug-induced mania, which might have been the case here, is to be subdued until EMS arrives, until emergency services arrive. Because if that's the case,
was he not handcuffed? Was like under the technical definition, he was subdued. He was handcuffed. He was in control.
I looked into it a while ago.
Regardless of the knee being on his neck, that knee could have not been on his neck. He would have still been subdued. And I think that's where you're gonna get down to in the court case of like the nitty-gritty of what is.
These are 4 guys with the handcuff guy. I'm looking at the video, and the ambulance arrived, and now the ambulance is coming up. That's when the knee got off the neck.
Part of the problem, I think there's specific guidance, police protocol with regard to when this particular neck hold is used and for how long.
Yeah.
And I had thought that I had read that if the police are using this neck hold because they are concerned that the subject is suffering from, I forget what it's called, drug-induced euphoria or like some kind of ailment.
Psychosis. It's drug-induced psychosis.
Yeah.
That the idea is that they need to keep him in the hold until EMS arrives because he cannot be allowed to move. Maybe that's a really bad idea, but
he got choked out.
Maybe that policy caused him to be choked out, and we need to change that policy.
I think it is. I think it's par for the course. I think it's very much normal situation all the way around, and it went bad this time.
What are the
probably a combination of asphyxia caused by?
Well, even as a libertarian, Bruce, like how can you accept that policy? Because at some point a cop could be
not accepting it at all. I'm just talking about it. I don't accept any of this.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
I don't want any of it.
Because like at some point a cop could be coming like, oh, you're a libertarian, like that's fucking nonsense. And they just got their fucking knee in your neck until you die.
Yeah, like, I mean, it would policy, suck. Like the shit policy.
The libertarian can be coming out and like, nah, we can't accept any of this shit. Like,
I don't accept any of it.
Yeah, that's why
the person that he robbed from the gate. The person that he robbed from the gate should have been able to shoot him. In my world, so that's what I would have said. I would have done that. This is a non-issue in that scenario.
Can someone say something about the punishments that are possible for Chauvin? Like, what is he looking at in best case, worst case?
He didn't rob anybody.
I'm not familiar with
Not
the.
today. It's a different time.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with Missouri statutes, but if
Mississippi,
if they go and say not guilty on the murder 3, meaning that they cannot prove intent to cause harm or death, and they go with manslaughter due to negligence. I think manslaughter is like a class 5 or class 4 felony, so that's anywhere between, say, 20 and 40 years, somewhere in there, just based on Virginia statutes. And I could be thinking that wrong. I know a class 3 felony is between 5 and 20 years here in Virginia. So, I mean, I would say that would be the best guess that I could give, is between 5 and 20 years on the manslaughter charge. I doubt they're going to get the murder 3.
So what it is, actually, I'm looking at it. It's if he's convicted of voluntary manslaughter, which is the lowest charge, the lowest count that they're trying to get him on. And what they would have to show is that he killed George Floyd while he was intentionally committing what's known as a gross misdemeanor or a 5th degree assault. So it would be a misdemeanor assault that ended up causing death. If they can get him on that, then I think the penalty by statute is not more than 15 years in prison. So the judge would probably have a lot of discretion if he were just convicted on that part for a police officer with no priors.
What if, regardless, he gets off because of the U.S. Supreme Court, lawyers scams, that if they haven't specifically adjudicated that what he did is wrong for cops, he's qualified for immunity, even if it's contrary to training, even if it's grossly negligent, he's still immune as a cop unless they've narrowly litigated nearly exactly the same factors, even if his training included that what he did is a violation of the victim's civil rights or grossly irresponsible.
This case is going to turn on
stare decisis. Is that right?
Stare decisis. Stare decisis just is kind of Latin for "it has been decided," which generally stands for the proposition that the Supreme Court, all else being equal, strongly prefers to keep itself in line with its own precedent.
Except that that there are a number of cases. The latest one I think I posted, I forget where, in the Pangburn site, where for cops and immunity, which essentially is also meaning for lawyers and judges, but they aren't mercenaries on the front lines. They don't get prosecuted nearly as easily. That it's not just the general body of precedent, but they get immunity unless a very narrow version of facts for a very cherry-picked variant of what seems like an obviously criminal violation has been repeated almost in exactly the same form. It seems like to me like that's insanity on the part of the court, but that's what they've been ruling.
You gotta remember that the types of cases that go to the Supreme Court get there through a process where there's a very abstract issue of law to be decided, right? The Supreme Court is never going to adjudicate whether or not the jury, for example, correctly found that Chauvin was reckless in his mind. That's an issue of fact. It's not an issue of law. And the Supreme Court wouldn't be reviewing those kinds of things, right? I mean, unless you're saying something else.
Well, if they did, that's the kind of thing that they would kick back after deciding some other related issues that got them to look in the first place, for a lower court to review. But that's not what I'm saying. That in line with their other police qualified immunity decisions, including one relatively recent one, that might not matter if he's a cop, and if they play the games they've been playing, saying that the training doesn't matter, the violation of law doesn't matter. He's immune because he's a cop. Unless there's an extremely narrow equivalent precedent where he shouldn't know that what he did was illegal, but not based on the Constitution, not based on the statute, but based on the Supreme Court narrowly reviewing a nearly identical set of law and facts.
Well, I think that statutory immunity, for example, comes primarily from, qualified immunity comes primarily from statute. I could be wrong, but I don't think that generally it's not like a common law. It's not primarily a common law doctrine. It's going to come from the state statute. So Minnesota state statute, somewhere in the legislature authored code, is going to say that in these circumstances, a cop will not be convicted of this class of crime or something like that. And what the Supreme Court may or may not be, I would be really surprised if the Supreme Court would take up anything in this case at all. I mean,
it's a toxic case, in other words.
Well, hold on. There are a lot of cases pushing up to the Supreme Court right now that are related to qualified immunity. Also, what is it? What's the term that they say where like state patrol can just take money if they find you like traveling across state highways? They can just say, "Oh, we think you're using this $10,000 that you have on cash. We're just going to take it from you." What is it called?
Asset forfeiture.
Qualified immunity isn't at issue
or civil seizure, but no, that's
civil forfeiture, I think is what it's called. But they are looking at qualified immunity cases coming up pretty soon in the Supreme Court.
Well, they just had one, and I posted it with detailed analysis. I think by Gene Volek, within the last couple of weeks on Pangburn.
And it went towards the people, which was really nice.
No, it went towards the nutcase lawyer games of, even if the law and the actions are clearly criminal, if the court arrogantly didn't decide identically or nearly so, then the law doesn't matter.
I'm thinking of something else then.
Well, one variable I don't think we're considering when it comes to talking about the Supreme Court is, let's say that he ends up being found guilty. The defense will have a pretty strong case to appeal to the Supreme Court, is to say that Chauvin's constitutional right to a fair trial was compromised due to the threats of violence in Minneapolis. They're saying that if we didn't get the verdict we wanted, then the city will burn. And with the civil unrest, with the current, like I said, the current with the most recent shooting and all of that, I mean, there's video of people basically threatening either find Chauvin guilty or we're going to burn the city. So there's a very strong, compelling case to go to the Supreme Court to appeal the verdict of guilty, predicated just on you make the argument the jury pool is contaminated, and therefore it was a violation of the constitutional right to a fair trial by jury of your peers.
I think we need to completely upend the way that whole precedent and immunity thing works. And if you are qualified for immunity as a government actor, then you're not primarily a person entitled to civil rights. But that comes only if you're standing trial as an individual. But we have a really perverse lawyer game, where it can sort of play both ways. You're a legal fiction secondary, if that's convenient, to the right lawyers, and you're an individual natural person primarily, if that's convenient to the right lawyers, and they cherry pick, and flip flop in ways that make no rational sense.
Okay, so my point had nothing to do with the immunity. My point strictly is because we know, like we all have agreed, that the trial is in a very, very compromised time in a very compromised place, that regardless if he was a police officer or not, if this had been one rando white dude killing another rando black dude, for example, and you had the same things going on in the city, then rando white dude on trial would still have the fair argument to appeal to the Supreme Court that his civil rights have been violated because he didn't get a fair trial due to the threats of burning the damned city to the ground. That has nothing to do with qualified immunity.
Right. But and what if under the present circumstances, that's pretty much prolific in every major city across the country, and 20 cities blow up in response to events in any one of them, even a great distance away. It's not like.
And that says we have a lot of work to do as citizens of a country, because what we're doing is we're undermining the very system that's supposed to work for everybody.
What?
Sometimes unfair trials is just part of the system.
I think, look, like, that's an interesting point then, Sean, because if I could see an issue like that going to the Supreme Court, right? If the appeal is some kind of, I don't know, it could be a due process appeal, it could be a Sixth Amendment appeal, that one of these rights to due process or to a trial was impracticable in the circumstances. And what would those circumstances look like where you had to say, based on public sentiment and publicization and all that, this was not a fair trial? That I could easily see going to the Supreme Court, especially as more and more of these issues are being publicized. So that would be really interesting. But they wouldn't be adjudicating his guilt or innocence. They would only be adjudicating the legal doctrine that would determine whether or not a trial was fairly or unfairly conducted.
So every outrageous
the next
trial
step
is an unfair trial.
So the next step that would happen after they go to the Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court were to rule in Chauvin's favor that the trial was compromised, then they'd have to get a new judge, a new prosecutor. They'd have to go through all of the legal procedures, like the pretrial measures and all of that, and they would have to basically retry the case and hopefully do a damn better job than they did the first time around.
Would they need a jurisdiction change, or would that even make a difference?
They could make if it were to go for a retrial, the defense could actually petition the court for a change of, I don't think it's a change of jurisdiction, but it's like a change of theater. I'm not sure what the exact wording is, but you could basically petition to have the trial take place outside of the city where the case happened to ensure fairness. I'm not sure what the exact petition is called.
That's a change of venue.
We're in Mississippi.
Every outrage Virginia, the case is in Minnesota.
So every outrage trial is an unfair trial.
No, that would not be what the ruling would be. The Supreme Court would not come down with a ruling that says every trial that occurs in a state of public outrage is an unfair trial. The doctrine would be a lot more attenuated than that. That's not what they would say.
Yeah, they wouldn't even touch that. They wouldn't even adjudicate on that, period.
They might say that if the trial has been publicized to a degree where the outrage is consistent and interstate and across the entire nation to a point where public outcry hasn't decreased since the event of the crime to the date of the trial, then it may be in the judge's discretion to delay or whatever they're going to say. They're going to have a bunch of qualifiers like that, and then there'll be 50 more cases defining what each of those qualifiers means. I mean, that's how common law works.
Yeah, but they don't even, Supreme Court wouldn't even touch that. Like that's not a matter of like specific like details of law, I mean, we're talking about like specific details of a case. Like the Supreme Court's not going to touch that kind of thing typically.
They just look at legal precedent. They look at cases that have
rare,
they look at precedent. They look at precedent. So they'll look at certain cases that may have had a similar type of outcome and predicated on the decisions of those cases. That's what guides their decisions, is they look at any previous cases that would have any relevance to what the appeal petitions might have to say as far as appealing to the Supreme Court.
If your appeal is fundamentally that your Sixth Amendment or First Amendment rights to due process in a jury trial were not afforded to you in this case, then that would be an issue that would probably be an issue of law. Under what circumstances can a practicable jury trial proceed if the case has been so publicized that every juror is inevitably contaminated with prior bias? That might be a constitutional issue, and the Supreme Court would absolutely they would behoove them to rule on a constitutional issue. They're essentially the only ones that can do it is the Supreme Court. So they might craft a contour.
The appellate court certainly can
I
too.
do think that might happen in the future. Yeah, just with like,
or what are the odds that the Supreme Court would look at this as a political hot potato mess and frequently try to avoid establishing case law if they don't have a nice set of facts that can let
then
them...
I would say then they're not doing their due diligence, because they're not supposed to look at the political. That's supposed to be stripped away from it. It is strictly supposed to be predicated on law and law alone, from what I understand.
That's not how they actually act, though, unfortunately.
What they might do is they might say that we think that there is an issue here with respect to the age of the internet and the age of social media and how it affects fair trials in particularly publicized domains, right? They might say that, but they also might say that the facts of this particular case are not such that we can adjudicate it in a way that would set a sound legal precedent going forward that courts could put into practice to determine whether or not each successive trial is more like this trial, where it wouldn't be an ineffable jury trial, or if it would be more like a reasonable jury trial. When they're going to take up a new issue, they're going to pick a case where they think they can craft a contoured, responsible principle. And that may or may not be this case. They only take like 0.01% of cases that are appealed to them. So they're routinely rejecting cases that they may have strong views on.
They did that in the election.
It's not quite that low.
They passed up the election and having any say in that, and said that's the court. It's supposed to be decided in the courts that it's supposed to be decided. So they're not going to kick anything to us. It's that we don't have nothing to do with it. That part of the court is supposed to deal with it.
On that,
about 1.8%. I was off by about an order of magnitude.
On that last note from Brother Nivik. So we'll switch into after show mode now. Thank you everyone for weighing in on the hypothetical Tuesday. We're going to go from live to off the air, and you can all meet me in Trav's Tavern. I've added a tab for the after show. So if you guys want to join us in Trav's Tavern, we're just going to be hanging out, bullshitting about different stuff. And we will catch you guys on the next one. Let art and science inspire.
So do you have any good double box, or are we stuck with British ale?